written absentee applications, which I'm happy to submit now or at your leisure or when you're ready, but we have that while you're considering it, and I'm happy to also provide argument after you guys go through.
I think that would short circuit some things, so why don't you hand it over now, please?
And please identify yourself for the record, sir.
Thought I had before. Christopher Moyler, M-E-U-L-E-R, appearing on behalf of the Biden for President campaign.
May I request a copy as well?
You bet. Brought it for you.
Yeah, no, at this time, 10:40, we will stand in recess.
All right, looks like we'll be getting some updates in just a little bit there out of Wisconsin. You heard that they are on recess for now. You're watching News Now from Fox, always right here. Folks, we're just about 20 minutes away from a White House news briefing. Of course, we will have that for you in its entirety when that does become available. First time in weeks, maybe even months, that we are getting this update. So we will feature that for you always right here in full, live and direct right here on News Now from Fox. In the meantime, everybody, let's show you a little updates here across the board. This one about Thanksgiving and masks. Yeah, I bet you didn't think it was going to be that.
Jill Crittenden is part of a consortium that has studied the effectiveness of masks, and she's joining me once again this morning to talk about masking up during the holidays. Good morning to you. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Sylvia. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you have a mission that you're calling How to Spread the Word, Not the Virus. Tell us the message you're trying to get through when it comes to masking up.
I was motivated to start this campaign because I see groups of people sit down at restaurants and immediately everybody takes their mask off and starts talking to each other. And we know that a lot of COVID transmission is occurring when dining together, not only at restaurants, but also in homes. And when we talk, droplets that could carry virus shoot far out of our mouth and could infect people. And the louder we talk, the farther the droplets go. So high quality masks that fit snugly on the face to cover the nose and mouth can protect people from breathing other people's droplets in and also stop the virus from shooting out when an infected person is wearing a mask.
Okay, we're looking at some video that you sent us to kind of show exactly what you're talking about. But okay, you've developed some safety protocols that you'd like to share with us. Let's start with the first one. You say people eating or drinking together should not talk while unmasked. And you kind of addressed that a little bit, but explain specifically why.
Well, studies show, like an example that you just showed, that where these droplets are visualized with lasers, they shoot far out of people's mouth when they're talking and singing. And when you're just breathing, even with your mouth open or opening and closing your mouth, a lot fewer of these big droplets are coming out. So I think that some of this transmission that we're seeing when people are eating or just having coffee together, they say, is because they're actually talking directly at each other.
Okay, number two, you say when dining together, do not touch your face or your food with your hands. Use your utensils. Explain.
Yeah, that's the other thing is your hands can be contaminated, right, from touching things that are contaminated. So just use utensils instead of your hands, and don't put your hands on your face because the virus gets in through your nose, your mouth, or your eyes, so you don't want to put infected hands there.
Okay, you say hand hygiene and distance are shown independently of masks to be protective. Explain that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So people have done a number of studies showing that masks are protective, but they separately looked at hand hygiene and distance. And so just wearing a mask isn't as good as both wearing a mask and staying far away from each other. And similarly with hand hygiene independently correlated with protecting yourself from COVID-19.
Okay, so you have this list that you sent us that's important. I want our viewers to take a look at their screen. And you say these masks are effective at filtering small particles. And here they are. So let's go over them real quick. We have the Air Queen, Happy Mask, Halo Life, Nano Air, KN95, which we've all heard so much about, the ASTM1, or any higher surgical mask. And then you also say cloth-only masks are less effective, and you're recommending ear savers to make masks easier to pull up and down. Now, I should say, you're obviously not being paid by any of these masks that we have listed here. Why, in general, are you recommending these, though?
So there's two special filters that people have developed that can actually trap these small respiratory particles. Whereas with cloth, all you can do to prevent the particles from going through the mask is make the hole size really small in the weave really tight. And when you do that, it's hard to breathe through the mask because air doesn't go through the mask either. And so these special filters that are called electrets, like what are in a KN95, that's an electrically charged filter, or a nanofiber. So people can just search for nanofiber filter.
Okay.
And that's the reason that I'm recommending these particular masks. Like you said, I haven't been paid by those companies, but I have actually done tests with a lab at MIT to see how much air is getting through and how many droplets are getting through. And so that's why I can have confidence that these filters really work. Compared to cloth. So they can filter out as much as 90 to 95% of the particles, whereas cloth rarely goes above 20% of filtration.
Interesting.
The thing is to get one that fits tightly, right? So that air is not going through gaps around the mask. And so cone-shaped or cup-shaped masks, which all of those ones that I listed are, help that make that tight.
Okay. I wonder if we can, hey, Mike, our director, can you put that list back up for our viewers again? Because I think it's important for them to see. And if we can get that list of the masks up there one more time, that would be great. But as we are trying to pull that up, here we go. Thank you so much, Mike. Where can people get these masks? And they can go online and probably just type those names and find them. And then finally, I think this is really important. You say air filtration and ventilation indoors is key as the people are gathering for the holidays. What's kind of your final word on that?
Yeah, so people are doing studies showing that if you have an air filter like a HEPA unit or open windows and fans, you can quickly disperse the virus so that it's not at a high enough concentration to infect people. Now, things have to be situated just right. So I have to reiterate that the utmost priority is what the CDC said, right? That gathering together with people outside of your house at Thanksgiving is very dangerous. And people are particularly concerned in our community because right now, most of the virus is in the young people that it's being transmitted. And so there's a lot of concern that they'll get together with older populations who are particularly vulnerable at Thanksgiving, and those people will likely become ill. And so that's, I just want to recommend people protect the grandmas and grandpas so that we can celebrate.
Yeah, Dr. Jill, we're starting to lose you a little bit here, but I get what you're saying. You're saying don't do it if you can avoid it, especially if you get around your elderly family members. But if you do get together to open windows, get any vent going, any airflow, that's the most important thing we can remember, in addition to wearing masks and all those other things that we've been told to do. Great.
And if it's warm, have a picnic.
I love that idea, but that's not going to happen here in Chicago. It can probably happen out where you are. Dr. Jill Crittenden with MIT. Always a pleasure, very informative. Happy holidays and have a safe one. I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Thanks to our sister station Fox 32 there in Chicago, as we continue to always bring you the very latest right here on News Now from Fox. We will be getting a Wisconsin update a little bit later here on News Now. Live look at the White House just moments away, everyone, moments away from a White House news briefing. Of course, we will have that for you as soon as that gets going, everyone. In the meantime, let's show you a little bit more of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I know we played this a little bit ago, but we want to show you some full remarks here.
Be able to be joining each other in the traditional way, but virtually we'll come together to thank God for our blessings. As we do so, though, it will be with great pain. It will be great pain that in our country, in this course of this year, 250,000 Americans have lost their lives to the coronavirus. Daily cases have averaged over 160,000 in this past week. Hospitalizations have set a national record for 3 days in a row last week. And over 11 million, it's 11.7 million and growing, people have been infected. Cases are set to rise. On the economic front, 20 million Americans are on unemployment, with the benefits soon set to expire, and millions have fallen into poverty and are food insecure and face the threat of eviction. So this is what is in our hearts. Sadly, our traditional, some of the things that we do regularly, but especially at Thanksgiving, to minister to those who are food insecure and the rest, will not actually be possible, but nonetheless, we must try. We are in a full-blown economic and health catastrophe, and it's amazing to see the patience the GOP has for other people's suffering. In another week, a few weeks, we'll observe the 8th anniversary of Sandy Hook. 8 years ago, we saw the unspeakable horror of innocent children being gunned down at Sandy Hook. The people cried out for gun violence prevention, but the Republicans just brushed it off. This too shall pass. Several months ago, we all watched the murder of George Floyd. The American people poured into the streets. In fact, people all over the world poured into the streets for days and in some cases weeks. But Republicans ignored that, refused to pass legislation. This too shall pass. Now 250,000 Americans, as I mentioned, are dead. The number's rising. Over 6 months ago, when we passed the HEROES Act, Leader McConnell said, we need a pause. We need a pause. Well, I would hope that for him, the pause can come to an end. Nearly 200,000 people have died during that pause. So we're asking him, come back to the table. A few days ago, Leader Schumer and I sent him a letter, which you've all seen, asking the Republicans to come back to the table to meet the needs of the American people, which they have been willing to ignore. We would like to extend some of the provisions of the CARES Act, which are set to expire at the end of this year. We want to, again, add to that meeting the food needs. Over 17 million children in America are food insecure. And we have a hard time getting to put food, addressing those food needs into legislation. We must have that. The American people want that. That's part of our value system. Again, let's have help with rental assistance. Okay, have a moratorium, but unless the rent is paid, people are not going to be able to stay in their homes, and their landlords are not going to be able to pay the bank. So this helps everybody. It has become clear in the past 6 months that we needed more PPP to help our small businesses. Let's work that in, as we have tightened our belt any number of times in our HEROES Act, and once again a month ago to include PPP. The list goes on, but some of these things about unemployment insurance, food security, stopping evictions, PPP to keep our businesses, small businesses, thriving. And they have refused to crush the virus. They even admitted they had no intention of controlling it, much less crushing it. It is my hope that with the vaccine now, that will give a different perspective across the threshold to say there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so that the president and the administration and the Republicans can say, yes, we should follow science in a shorter period of time than we've been through already. If we test, trace, treat, wear a mask, social distance, sanitation, recognizing that the hit that this is taking onto communities of color, if we do what is in the HEROES Act in this regard, we'll be ready for the vaccine to have a big effect right from the start. And in light of the vaccine, as we have in the HEROES Act, and perhaps we should do more now because the vaccine is here, it's imminent, that we should be having the resources to make sure that the vaccine is distributed immediately, equitably, so that everyone has access to it. In that regard, though, for that to happen, the president must implement the Defense Production Act so that those companies, those entities that are used to this new technology that both Pfizer and Moderna have used can undertake making this vaccine more available, because we're going to need quite a bit for ourselves and for the world, because unless everyone is safe, as I said, no one is safe. So let's hope that it's time for McConnell's pause to end. We have been working on the omnibus bill, and I thought that would be a segue into this. Let's hope that it is. Again, it is curious to see how they are trying to impede progress. And another misguided act of irresponsibility, Secretary Mnuchin has said he would end many critical emergency lending initiatives at the end of the year. Now, why would they do that? Drawing a rare rebuke from the Fed. Fed rarely speaks out. As the Fed said in its statement, it would prefer the full suite of emergency facilities established during the coronavirus pandemic to continue to serve their important role as a backstop for our still strained and vulnerable economy. The Fed would prefer the full suite of emergency facilities established during the coronavirus pandemic continue to serve their important role as a backdrop for our still strained and vulnerable economy. It's highly unusual for the Fed to comment in that manner on something said by the Secretary of the Treasury. Again, why? Why? Because they want to impede the ability of the next administration to have everything available to them. The situation could not be more dire. The need for action could not be more urgent. Real meaningful relief is desperately needed. No surprise to anyone, perhaps except Mitch McConnell. The families are losing lives and livelihoods. The hospitals are overwhelmed. The frontline workers are risking their lives and losing their jobs. The parents are unable to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. 17 million children in America are food insecure. And we couldn't even get the food issue into the CARES Act. So we need to get it into the legislation now. Schools are unable to keep students and staff safe. That could happen. All we have to do is follow the science. We know how we can open our economy, open our schools safely, but we have to make a decision to follow science and good governance. Again, this week again, Senator Leader Schumer and I wrote to McConnell demanding that he finally come to the table on a bipartisan, bicameral COVID relief. As we said in the letter that I referenced earlier, the dual public health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19 continue to devastate communities across the country. What is becoming clear to all Americans is that we cannot achieve real economic recovery until we address the expanding public health crisis. The time to act is upon us like never before. The pandemic and the economic recession will not end without our help. Later today, Leader Schumer and I will be visiting President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. We'll be discussing the lame duck session, the urgency of crushing the virus and easing the pain of this economic crisis, keeping government open, as I referenced earlier, the omnibus bill. We're pleased that our Moving America Forward legislation that we passed in the summer and Build Back Better of Joe Biden are so compatible for creating good paying jobs, including through investments in infrastructure, manufacturing, workforce development, clean energy. The list goes on and on. We're very proud. Okay, now You wonder about this. You wonder about this. Did you know that House Democrats got nearly 2 million more votes than Donald Trump? I say that because everybody said, well, what? Everybody turned out, and it was a great victory, a mandate. The most important thing we did 2 years ago was win the House. We won 40 seats.
And those were just some of the remarks there from Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. News Now from Fox will continue. And we continue on here on News Now from Fox, a live look at the White House briefing room. Can you believe it? We are having a briefing here in just moments. It was just added about an hour ago. It wasn't on the schedule to begin the morning, but then as the morning went on, well, we saw that they added Kayleigh McEnany ready, and as soon as that happens, we'll bring it to you here on News Now from Fox. But in the meantime, everybody, while we do wait for Kayleigh, we have another legend. We got Ron Hoon right here on deck for us. Ron, how you doing today? And happy Friday to you.
Mike, same to you. Happy Friday. And that's the kind of introduction I can't turn down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, this is a follow-up now to what I believe was a very successful news conference yesterday coming out of the White House. I watched it unfold. I know you had it here on News Now. Fox News Channel had it as well. It was interesting. About 2/3 of the way through, I went to another channel that you would think would have been carrying it, and they were in a bunch of commercials. And I wasn't sure if they ever carried it, if they dumped out, or what the situation was. But when we're right on the verge now, hopefully, literally within a matter of days, of FDA approval anticipated,
yes,
hopefully coming soon for the approval of the vaccine, it seems like that's one of the biggest stories of the day, and you would think everybody would cover it. It's just one of the reasons that we feel that News Now from Fox is such a success, because we take you to those events, we let you listen to it uninterrupted, and let you really kind of hone in on the pertinent facts. The fact that they had one of the nation's top military leaders talking about how they are set and ready to go. You know, Operation Warp Speed is clearly working. And you know, they're going to be ready to go with the distribution. And the fact that just today we got word that the whole process is kind of moving along very quickly on trying to seek that emergency use authorization from the federal government. So anyhow, the signs are good. It was a fascinating news conference yesterday. There's been some reporting, Mike, as to that Dr. Anthony Fauci will be invited to stay on in the new administration. I mean, he's such a sort of beloved national expert that I mean, they would have to. I mean, you could not bounce him out with the new administration coming in. But there's some reports as to whether or not Dr. Deborah Birx might be keeping her position. And she did just a great job in that news conference yesterday. And one other thing that I should mention, Mike, about that, because I think it's still making a lot of headlines, no matter where people are watching us all over the country, was as firm a statement as I think we've heard from the government about how important it is to keep our kids in school and keep them learning in person, that cases of the virus that are occasionally popping up now, and I don't think anybody thinks second graders are super spreaders, that kind of thing. When we're talking about the nation's children, we're really talking about the older age groups, junior high, high school, etc., and that those are not, in almost all cases, being traced to the classroom. They're being traced to activities where people are hanging out together in somebody else's home or at a party, those kinds of things. So they even had one of the nation's health directors at this news conference yesterday talk about how important it is for students' mental health to still be in school. So, you know, there are many different aspects to it. We do see a handful of schools out here in the Southwest who are announcing closing up in terms of in-person learning and going back onto online learning, which is maybe not so tough for a high school kid, but it's very difficult for a first grader. or a second grader or a third grader not to have that in-person learning.
Absolutely. And Ron, to add on to your point there, when you were talking about the other cable stations that weren't covering this at all, I was in disbelief yesterday because I was here still on the desk for News Now, and I looked up and I see that Fox News Channel had it, and then I look at the others, and it wasn't even on for a second. Now, these are the same people that were telling you, they were really crying about the fact that it's been weeks and weeks without a COVID-19 White House briefing, and then you get it.
Yes.
And then they don't even air it, so it was a little bit strange. Yeah. And then the weirdest part too, then Ron, was when Vice President Mike Pence walks out. You hear all the media members are really upset that there was no question and answer round. But then I was thinking about, well, your own cable station's already been covering it, so it wouldn't be even aired.
I just don't get it. I do not get the decision making there. I mean, it would be one thing to go to it, and after the first 2 or 3 people that speak, you got to get onto some other kind of programming or whatever. But to not carry it at all, and frankly, in its entirety, it just really it's a head scratcher. The fact that we're on the verge of this vaccine being approved, that the results from the phase 3 trials are so positive, and the fact that it is offering hope to the entire country would make it seem like that would be an important event. But once again, that's why News Now is here, to fill that niche.
Oh, yes, it is. That's what we'll definitely be doing. And then as soon as this White House briefing gets going, we will have that for you right here on News Now from Fox as well. Another story I want to get to, Ron, while we do have some time here, it's still, Congress still at odds with this potential COVID-19 stimulus. We've been hearing about it for months now. And when COVID-19 really did kick off back in March and April, you remember that it was the first wave of that stimulus money that came through, but there was no follow-up then, Ron, and I think a lot of people were thinking that there would be some follow-up.
There's a lot that happens in Congress on a day-to-day basis that people don't tune into and probably don't care about a lot. This is one that they really do care about a lot. And it's just, I think if there was a message, there were many different messages that came out of the election. But I think it's safe to say that a lot of people felt like, particularly, Mike, if we head into this era now of more divided government, with a Democrat in the White House, Democrats controlling the House, the Senate staying Republican, which that's still, not a slam dunk. But if it does, and the fact, frankly, that Democrats lost a fair number of seats and their margin is going to be just very thin in the House, it seems to me that people are saying, somehow or another, we want you guys, we don't want to have a gigantic blue wave, we don't want to have a gigantic red wave, we just want you to work together to get some things done. So, there's some encouraging signs. Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, says that they are going to try to work together here once Thanksgiving comes and goes. And up on Capitol Hill, they come back for that lame duck session. But the only way it's going to happen is if Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell and their leader, Nancy Pelosi with the Democrats in the House, all get together and meet in the middle. Is it that hard?
Yeah, that is what a lot of people want to see, because at the end of the day, now, I heard a great interview on Fox News Channel, what was it, just yesterday? They had Mike Huckabee, Ron, talking about he had an idea that would really get the stimulus moving fast. And you know what that would be, is if Congress and a lot of these politicians, governors even included, if they would be taking those cuts as well, I think we would get some fast moving for the American people there, because he was also talking about these politicians like governors, where they want to do these shutdowns for these poor businesses that are really at odds right now, even if they'll survive. And he made the point there, if they would see a cut themselves, maybe they would feel the burn a little.
Well, Fox has a story out there today just talking about how, and also with the New York Post, talking about as they face the prospect here of growing shutdowns in and around New York City, a city that across our entire country, you know, just economically, if New York City isn't doing well, you know, that's the financial capital of our country and the financial capital of the world. And are they going into a phase now in the coming weeks and months where yet once again more businesses are going to have to close and close permanently, and hundreds, if not thousands of people are going to lose their jobs again? I mean, Mike, I don't know about you, but pretty much everywhere I go out here in Phoenix, Arizona, people are masked up. You go to any grocery store, you go to any other kind of location, and everybody's wearing their masks. I'm sure if you go into other retail establishments, it's the same kinds of things. So to shut down and impact so many businesses is, as you can imagine, there is great angst in New York City and in some other places around the country as well. There are ways to slow the spread, but just going in again and closing down all kinds of businesses. Yes. It's the old question about, are you taking steps that are so severe that they will impact people's livelihoods, their mental health, even suicides, Mike, went up that first time around when the nation went into lockdown. I don't think, I mean, if you're going to take Joe Biden at his word, he's not going to do any kind of a national lockdown when he gets into office. He says he wants to lock down or shut down the virus, not the economy. I don't think we're headed that way. But again, there's a lot of power vested in these governorships.
Yes.
And if they start to go down that road again, it will really, you can just imagine the frustration that a lot of these businesses are going to feel, because there has to be a better way, a different way to figure out, hold on a minute, it's not your grandma going to the grocery store to pick up her groceries, or a mom with her mask on who's going in to buy some school clothes for the kids. That's not where this thing is spreading. We got to figure out exactly where it is, what are the populations, you know, in terms of the kind of the age bracket, and so figuring out where it is it's spreading and getting after it in a more specific manner.
Absolutely, Ron. Well said there. And Ron, we're just seeing Kaylee come up to the podium, so we thank you for your time and setting us up here for the White House news briefing. And Ron, you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, Mike. See you, buddy.
All right, everybody. White House briefing underway right now. You're watching it live right here on NewsNOW from Fox. And remember, we will not move away from this. You're going to see it in its entirety right here, live, raw, and always unfiltered.
Agreements with CVS and Walgreens to administer vaccines to residents of long-term care facilities. On October 21st, under the PrEP Act, we issued guidance authorizing qualified pharmacy technicians to administer the vaccine. On October 30th, we announced that McKesson Corporation will produce, store, and distribute vaccine ancillary supply kits on behalf of the Strategic National Stockpile to help healthcare workers who will administer the vaccines. And on November 12th, we announced the partnership with large chain pharmacies and independent regional ones to deliver safe and effective vaccines. The unprecedented response to this pandemic has already saved many American lives. And as you can see, this timeline was ongoing. This was a long process and one that we are very proud of. Now, with multiple safe and effective vaccines just around the corner, we urge all Americans to wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask when you cannot do so. And with that, I'll take questions. Kevin.
Kaylee, thanks. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm asked fairly often away from the White House, and that is with respect to what Rudy Giuliani and the legal team on the campaign side had to say yesterday. People ask, let's suggest that, yes, there is evidence of fraud, irregularities, even malicious intent with respect to vote totals. The question is, what then would be the pathway or strategy to overturn what the campaign believes is a flawed election? Are we talking about a judicial pathway? Are we talking about a legislative pathway? And a follow-up, how soon might Americans be able to get their hands on a COVID vaccine?
Yes, so to your first point, I would say this. There's been multiple pieces of litigation filed across the country by various individuals, the campaign and others. I will leave it to the campaign to make those determinations as to how to proceed. But the president's been very clear. He wants every legal vote to be counted and to make sure no illegal votes are counted. But with regard to a vaccine, we believe that there will be 40 million doses available by the end of the year. Again, this is extraordinary. This is the fastest vaccine in history by fivefold. It's really extraordinary progress. You've heard Dr. Fauci, among others, say that, and it was only made possible because of this president who said at the same time I'm pursuing a vaccine, I'm going to do something novel. I'm going to manufacture it. So many American lives will be saved thanks to President Trump and the great work of Operation Warp Speed.
Can I follow up one more? Just one thing about the COVID vaccine. Is there a concern inside the White House that a lack of working with a potential or presumptive President-elect Biden team will somehow slow down the distribution of the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. It's an important one, and not in the slightest, because in fact, I did hear the former vice president say yesterday he was concerned about not being able to distribute a vaccine. He shouldn't be. Maybe he hasn't seen, but we have publicly available that plan that I mentioned in my opening. It's the COVID-19 vaccination program, the interim playbook for jurisdiction operations. This is publicly available if the former vice president would like to read through it. Beyond that, I would say that we've already, going back months, partnered with the 64 jurisdictions in this country to make sure that they each had individualized distribution plans. Those have been assessed. Those have been made certain that they're good and operational. So this work has been ongoing. There's a distribution plan in place, which is why you heard General Perna say yesterday that within 24 hours of getting that EUA, the emergency use authorization, we will be able to distribute this all across the country.
When are you going to admit you lost?
Yes, Kevin? Yeah. Sorry, Mario.
Okay. Thanks, Kaylee. What is the president planning to discuss this afternoon with the two Michigan lawmakers? And will he ask them to have the state legislature appoint electors who will support his reelection? What's the nature of that meeting?
So he will be meeting later on. This is not an advocacy meeting. There will be no one from the campaign there. He routinely meets with lawmakers from all across the country.
When will you admit you lost the election?
Kaylee, at what point does the president concede the race and allow for a proper transition to the Biden team?
So right now there's ongoing litigation. There are, what we know, 74 million Americans that voted for this president. That's more votes than any president has gotten in history. It's really extraordinary, and there are very real claims out there that the campaign is pursuing. 234 pages of affidavits publicly available in one county alone, that's Wayne County, and 2 individuals on the canvassing board there that have declined to certify. So these are real claims. These individuals deserve to be heard. This was a system that had never been tried in American history, mass mail-out voting. It's one that we have identified as being particularly prone to fraud, so those claims deserve to be pursued.
Has anyone from the White House spoken with GSA, with the director of GSA, about the timing of ascertaining who the next president will be, and has any pressure been applied to her?
Absolutely not. GSA will make the determination of ascertainment at the right moment. Right now, there's a constitutional process that's being played out. There are questions being asked in court, but the GSA will determine when ascertainment is reached.
Can I just ask one other question, which is Senator Lamar Alexander today has put out a statement encouraging the Trump administration, in the absence of ascertainment, to begin allowing the Biden team full access to everything they need for a transition, access to agencies, access to real-time data. What's the harm in doing that?
So there's a Presidential Transition Act that determines exactly what an administration needs to do in advance of an election, and we have done everything statutorily required, and we will continue to do that.
It's after the election now.
Thank you. I have a question first, a follow-up on the transition. Has the president or anyone in the administration instructed officials not to engage or have conversations with members of the Biden transition team?
No, I've certainly never been instructed that. I've never heard of an instruction to that end.
Okay, and my second question is about COVID, because yesterday, a lot of what we heard from the doctors, they've been saying since the end of March. Back then, the projections were that 100,000 Americans would die. Now, as you know, we've surpassed that by 2.5 times. Did the administration fail to communicate how serious this threat was to the American people? Or how else do you explain what went wrong?
Look, I would say the initial projection that our doctors gave us was 2 million people that would lose their lives. And it's a tragedy anytime one life is lost, but we are far below the 2 million that this could have been. We took very aggressive measures at the beginning of this with the China travel ban, creating the greatest testing system in the entire world. Therapeutics, the fact that we have 6 working therapeutics right now, the fact that we continue to identify more and more, the fact that I believe we have a chart on this, a fatality chart. It's deaths by 100 for age and month. And as you can see, deaths have come down for every age group. And for those over 70, that line, that red line, is a testament to what this president has done. Therapeutics, monoclonal antibodies, that is a recent one, that reduces hospitalization in high-risk seniors with moderate to mild COVID by 70%. That's American ingenuity rising to the occasion, and President Trump oversaw all of this. But of course, we are seeing cases rise, and it's very important. Wash your hands, socially distance. We're taking this seriously.
Do you think the mixed messaging contributed to that? Because just this week, for example, yesterday, Vice President Pence wanted to make clear that they supported state and local decision-making. Just 2 days ago, you called some of those state guidelines Orwellian. So how do you expect people to know what to do with all this mixed messaging?
Well, 2 things can happen at once, and it's this: taking COVID seriously, engaging in aggressive mitigation, but also recognizing that the American people have certain freedoms. And it is, by definition, Orwellian for a state like Oregon to say, if you have more than 6 people in your family congregate in your home, we can jail you for 30 days. That's not the American way. The American people know the CDC recommendations, know the guidelines. We've been talking about this for 10 months, but the American people still have certain freedoms, still have autonomy, and still can make important self-responsibility decisions themselves.
Yes, Deborah. Thank you, Kaylee, and nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Last night, Tucker Carlson said that campaign attorney Sidney Powell had failed to provide evidence for her assertion about communist money in the 2020 election. And Byron York, another journalist who's been very fair to this White House, said that it was a turning point, Rudy Giuliani and the conduct at that press conference, where Republicans were feeling that the legal maneuvers just aren't working. So did you all have a reaction to that when you saw that and read about it?
Again, that would be a question for the campaign. We at the White House are aggressively working on COVID, winding down the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, among other issues. There will be a drug pricing announcement later in the afternoon as well.
Kaylee, since I'm the cooler, could I ask a question for Jackson Richmond of the Jewish News Syndicate, who couldn't be here because of social distancing? And his question is about Jonathan Pollard. His parole conditions are set to expire tomorrow. Is the president willing to commute his parole conditions or pardon him if the DOJ extends Pollard's parole? Have you been getting any calls from the Jewish and pro-Israel community to take action on this case?
I haven't heard about that. I haven't looked into the particular case, but if he shoots me an email, we'll take a look at his question.
Thank you.
Yes.
So back to the topic of concession, like you said earlier, is there something that the president needs to see before making that call? Is it the end of these lawsuits, whenever they do wrap up all of them, states certifying results or different counties, or December 14th when the Electoral College casts its ballots?
Look, the president, again, is pursuing ongoing litigation, taking it day by day, and we'll wait for that litigation to play out.
So just to clarify, it's the end of that litigation that we would need to see before getting a call?
There's an entire constitutional process of electors casting their ballots, and I will leave that to the president. Yes. Chanel.
Thank you, Kaylee. Contrary to the court of media opinion, there is real-time data showing vast irregularities in the voting system that we have watched over the last few weeks. I asked this question of the campaign, and I ask this of you now, the White House. Where is our FBI in this entire scheme? Are they looking at any of the evidence that this White House or the campaign have presented in terms of real-time data evidence of voter irregularity? Where is the FBI?
Yeah, I would refer you to the FBI on that, to the DOJ on that.
Spoken with the FBI in the last 3 weeks?
Not that I'm aware of. But look, I would say that there are real questions on mass mail-out voting. We have put those questions forward, and we said this for the better part of a year. There was a bipartisan commission that talked about and identified the real potential for fraud with mass mail-in voting. Also, something that I would note is just we talked a lot about transfer of power in the election, and it's worth remembering that this president was never given an orderly transition of power. His presidency was never accepted. In fact, before his election, we know Crossfire Hurricane was launched by Peter Strzok to pursue a baseless allegations about the president's ties with Russia. That's before he was president, trying to subvert the will of the American people. We know in August, Peter Strzok wrote a text message about an insurance policy against a Trump presidency, once again trying to silence the voice of the American people. In 2016, we know in October that there was a FISA warrant taken out to spy on the Trump campaign. And then the American people spoke, and they spoke commandingly in electing President Trump despite all of the odds. And what happened after he was elected? You had 70 lawmakers say we're not coming to his inauguration, Democratic lawmakers. You had Elizabeth Warren saying we're going to attempt to obstruct the Trump transition by urging the Government Accountability Office to investigate the incoming Trump transition. In January of that year, you had President Obama have a by-the-book meeting where they talked about the Logan Act, using that act to go after Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Just before the inauguration, you had BuzzFeed promoting and publishing this bogus Steele dossier that's been widely debunked. And then for 2 years, you had the basis Mueller investigation, which searched for collusion, found none, and exonerated President Trump. While in 2016, President Trump became the duly elected president, many sought to undermine him, discredit him, delegitimize him, and deny his victory. There were no calls for unity. There were no calls for healing. So while every legal vote is counted, let us not forget the inexcusable transition or lack thereof that President Trump had to endure in 2016 and 4 years into his presidency. Thank you, everyone, for the very good and substantive questions today. I don't call an activist.
I'm not an activist, and you've been taking questions since October 1st, and you just took about 5, Kaylee. That's not doing your job.
There we have it, the White House news briefing, edgy at the very end there, as Kaylee says, I don't call on activists. When a reporter there wanted to get a question in, not sure what outlet she's with there, but I'm sure we'll find out a little bit later here on News Now from Fox. The media not liking that update right there as we continue to bring you the very latest here on News Now from Fox. Thank you so much for joining us here. And once again, this is really what we do here at News Now from Fox. And thank you to all the new viewers that continue to watch here with us. We show a briefing from the beginning until the end. It won't matter who is in office. We will bring you. If the government wants to talk, we're going to show it to you here on News Now from Fox. I was looking up at some of the other cable networks, not showing that briefing. We'll show it here for you right here on News Now from Fox. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break for some of you, but stay right here because I know you're going to want to listen to this news briefing that is happening right now. It's a huge in-demand one, and we're going to bring it to you from the beginning all the way to the end here. This is in Wayne County, Michigan, where they continue to be at odds about certifying in that county. We're getting an update there now. It's happening live. You're going to see it right here on News Now from Fox. Live, raw, oh yeah, and unfiltered as well.
Report of what the vote totals were. It was well after 3 o'clock before we received a 77-page report with the vote totals. We were not provided with a written copy of the executive summary that gives you a plus-minus report per precinct, so you can understand which precincts are in balance, which precincts are out of balance, and which precincts are out of balance unexplained. The key here is the unexplained precincts. I asked for a written copy of that report before we began the meeting. I was told it wasn't available at the time. Wayne County Director of Elections, Greg Marr, provided a staff report, and in that staff report, he gave us the executive summary verbally. If you were watching the Zoom call or in the meeting, you saw us frantically trying to write down the numbers of the precincts for the different communities in Wayne County and within Detroit. I did the math while I was sitting there, and it appeared that 70% of the Detroit absentee counting boards were out of balance, unexplained. We have a repeat of the primary. The job of a canvasser is to make sure that you understand the differences between the number of ballots that are validly issued and received and the number of votes totaled. If there is a difference, you need to have an explanation. That is the job of the canvass. That did not occur in the 2 weeks that we had to canvass. That is why I voted no for the certification. Not just for Detroit, not to take votes away from anyone. It was to give the state the additional 10 days to do their investigation to get the answers to why the balances didn't match. Immediately upon voting no, my other board members made statements and immediately brought in the words racism and partisanship. My intent with my no vote was to make sure that we got the answers so that the voters of Detroit can have recountable precincts. It has nothing to do with black or white. After commentary from my board members and legal counsel informing me that I didn't have discretion to vote no, when I believe the documentation was not complete and accurate. My question is, if a board of canvassers doesn't have discretion to vote yes or no, why is there even a board of canvassers? We continued on with public comment. I endured about 2 hours worth of commentary, most of it calling me a racist, some of them getting personal and bringing my daughter into the situation and announcing to the world what city I live in and what school my daughter attends. During that public commentary, Vice Chair Kinloch pulled me into the back of the warehouse and offered me a compromise. He said he'd been on the phone with Democrats all throughout the state trying to find a solution to help certify the results in Wayne County. He assured me that he had confirmation from Governor Whitmer that they would be able to get an independent audit done to clarify the precincts that were unexplained in their differences. I asked him to draft up a motion because there were a few complications in exactly how we were going to describe an independent audit, independent comprehensive audit, to answer those questions. A softball audit of basically redoing the canvas may not catch it. It needs to be comprehensive. We went back out to the tables in the public. Vice Chair Kinloch met with the rest of the board members individually as to not cross any lines with the Open Meetings Act, and we came back, reconvened, and had a vote. Unfortunately, at that time, the Zoom conference on the laptop had been muted, and the public that was watching online was not able to hear the commentary with that motion being made. I saw an opportunity with that motion that Vice Chair Kinloch made to get to the bottom of the unexplained precincts. A comprehensive audit would attain the job that the canvass needs to do, and that is why I decided to vote yes on that motion. When that motion was passed, at the later point in the evening, we wrapped up the meeting shortly thereafter. With the amount of angry comments and threats that were coming in, I ended up leaving for my safety. I want to be clear that the documentation, the signatures on the final statement of votes that were voted to be certified, I did not physically sign. if there is a signature on that document, it was my signature stamp used without my approval. I do not have a copy of that document at this time to confirm if they put the signature stamp on it or not. It was brought to my attention that minutes after we took the vote, Secretary Benson was on TV saying that anything that we did in the motion was non-binding and that she wasn't agreeing to it. I made a good faith effort in that compromise with Vice Chair Kinloch and was misled. Right now, the State Board of Canvassers has the issue at their hands. I have provided them with a copy of my affidavit rescinding my vote. That motion to certify was contingent upon the comprehensive audit that needs to be done before there is a certification by the state. An audit after the fact is not going to answer those unexplained precincts, and they still will not be recountable. Another point that I want to make is that this is not about the presidential election. Most often the recounts are going to come for local candidates, city councils, school boards, mayors. When you're in a local community and you file for a recount and you walk in and half of the precincts can't be recounted because there's no answer as to why they don't match, that candidate and all the voters in that local district are disenfranchised. And with that, I guess we can start taking questions.
If it wasn't about the presidential election, why did you take a call from the president, and when did you talk to him in that process?
I am going to answer this question once.
What was the question? I'm sorry, we can't hear that.
He asked what the call from the president was about and what time it came.
You mentioned this wasn't about a presidential election yet. In the process of this, you took a call from the president. We'd love to know when it came. Was it between votes? Was it after your decision to reverse your vote? Can you clarify and what that discussion was about?
Sure. I was walked to my car with member William Hartman. And as I approached my car, I received a phone call and said, "Will you accept a call from the president?" And I said yes. I got in my car because it was cold. Member Hartman joined me. I received a call from the president. It was after the meeting, and he thanked me for my service, asked me how I was doing. There was a genuine concern for my safety with what he had heard, the threats that were coming in.
He was monitoring this apparently, and it was right after the meeting that you spoke with him?
No, it was later in the evening. It was as I was walking out. There was some time after the meeting that I was in the room, and my husband called and told me to get home. He was fearful for my safety. So I was waiting around to sign paperwork and left.
Are you saying the president's call had no influence on you recanting your vote?
Absolutely.
Did the president have any influence regarding your affidavit? Did he tell you or ask you to do that?
No, not at all. The call was genuinely for my safety.
Do you believe that your affidavit is binding and that therefore the canvas is not binding?
I'm not an attorney. That sounds more like a legal question, and I can get you contact from my attorney if you'd like to ask him.
When the president referred to your service, did he mean that night or in general? Can you be more specific?
How
specific did he get?
He didn't. Thank you for your service as a canvasser. Right? It's mostly a volunteer position. Prior to this election, not many people knew what a canvass was. Most people thought you had an election and it was done. A lot of people don't understand the process or the work that goes into it. And so as being providing a public service, I appreciated his appreciation for it.
And was there any reference to your vote that night or anything
No.
that you had said on the record?
No.
So just thank you for your service. Next topic.
Thank you for your service. Glad you're safe. Have a good night.
Did you get any calls or texts or emails from anyone else before the meeting suggesting how you should vote or asking how you should vote? Any Republicans, Democrats, neighbors, anybody?
2 days prior to the certification vote, My phone number must have been released or published to a couple of groups. I received phone calls from both the left and the right asking me to vote yes and no. When you're canvassing, it's not a personal decision of yes or no. It is, do you have complete, accurate documentation that every valid vote was counted and every invalid vote wasn't counted? You balance the number of ballots to the number of votes tallied. And you have to have an explanation for what the difference is. We didn't have explanations for several precincts.
How many votes are we talking about? Any idea in those 70-odd precincts?
I believe, and again, if I would have had the written executive summary prior to the meeting, I could have analyzed it better and had that information for you. I still don't have a copy of the written executive summary. I have the verbal from the meeting. I believe Director Marr said the highest out-of-balance precinct unexplained was 34 votes.
Mayor Duggan this week said the total cumulatively was less than 400. Given the spread of the margin of this election in Wayne County, why now? Everybody agrees that the unbalanced precincts is an issue. Why did you pick this time, this moment, to not certify a presidential election with overwhelming results, especially following what happened in August, when you're talking 400 votes out of over 300,000?
And I'm going to go back to the primary where it was a huge problem. And we certified with the good faith that it was going to have an investigation and be fixed. We're now here. It obviously wasn't fixed. And yes, it may be a cumulative of 400 votes. But tell that to a city councilman in Livonia, or whatever race they have in Livonia that's very close. If half of those precincts can't be recounted, doesn't that matter for him? Doesn't every vote count? So when you tell me it's only 400, I say those 400 people deserve to have their vote matter.
Ms. Palmer, how long have you served on the Board of Canvassers?
About 2 years.
And so how many elections have you done before this particular year?
I did not do the math.
But I mean, the primary and the general were not the first time you served.
Correct.
Have these problems of unexplainable discrepancies come up before 2020?
My understanding is that it's an ongoing problem in Wayne County for many years, and it's just kind of, that's the way it is. That doesn't make it right.
Somebody at the county told me you were appointed in May, so you were appointed 2 years ago as canvasser? I'm asking.
I'm like, roughly. Roughly
so
2 years.
Roughly, but you were appointed 2 years ago?
I was appointed, yes. This is an appointed position.
Yeah.
There was someone else had to leave their term early, and I was appointed to fulfill the second half of the term.
Was Hartman appointed at the same time? Or
No, Hartman was on the board when I was appointed to fill the opening. And to further clarify, there's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats on the board. Each county chair for the Republican and the Democrat, when they're filling their seats, they send recommendations to the county commission, and the county commission selects from those recommendations for the appointment.
Ms. Palmer, you're a member of the Michigan.
Where did it call for you to step down? Will you?
No, there's no reason to.
Ms. Palmer, you're a member of the Michigan 14th Congressional District Republican Committee. And
Yes.
this week, that committee circulated a draft resolution urging the state legislature to appoint a slate of electors that will support the re-election of Donald Trump. Were you involved in the drafting of that resolution, and do you support it?
I received an email that they were going to have a meeting regarding that, and I emailed the entire committee back and let them know with my position on the Board of Canvassers that I could not be involved.
Could you make a copy of that available to us through John Barlow or whomever, or through Mr. Schwartz?
I will look into that, yes.
You have to redact email addresses, we understand, but it'd be good to have that.
What would you like to see happen now? Where do you want to go from here? Talk to
At this point, my job is done as a Board of Canvasser for this election. It is up to the state Board of Canvassers at this point. What would I like to see? I'd like to see some change so that processes, equipment, whatever it takes to get the clerks what they need to get these election results documented properly on election night, that's what I want to see happen. The county staff going through the canvass worked multiple hours They did more work with this election, this canvas, than they have in any prior before, working 18 hours a night. They shouldn't have to work that hard to find the answers of why A doesn't match B. We need to start at the first step of the process and get it better there, and make sure that when it comes to the canvas, we can explain all those. And if we can't, you bring the clerk and the election inspectors in, you ask the questions until you get the answers.
So the Secretary of State's office saying this is a done deal, there's no decertifying the election results. You're not contesting that?
I don't know the legalities of that at this point. I'm going to defer to my legal team for that.
Do you expect to be a plaintiff in any action that happens to try and stop this certification?
I have no knowledge of... I have not been watching the lawsuits. My focus has been on Wayne County. Do we have explanations for the out of balance or not? Nobody's asked me. I don't know.
But you personally don't intend to sue as the chairwoman or as an individual or as a constituent? Okay.
With all due respect, if somebody in opposition to what you're saying, flatly, it's obviously very polarized, looks at the sequence of events 2 weeks ago, Ms. Romney leveling allegations that factually turned out to be not true, court cases that have been rejected or lost, Mr. Chatfield, Mr. Shirkey in Washington now, you getting a call from the president, yet you say none of that, you're not involved or in sequence with any of that. I mean, can you reiterate in regard to the fact that many may just not believe what you're saying, with all due respect to you?
And that's fine. I know what I'm doing and what's in my heart. I could not, in good conscience, certify numbers that I know there's no answers to. That is the point of the canvas. I challenge you. Look at the canvas in the rest of the counties across Michigan. Find out how many they have out of balance, unexplained. Take a look at that. And then come back and ask me what my real intention is for Wayne County canvas.
Canton and Ingham County clerks yesterday said 10% to your point, versus 70 for Detroit. So yes, what you're saying is accurate with that.
And let's look at the quantities. Ingham County, their largest difference unexplained was 4 votes, not 34.
Ms. Pullman, do you think it's possible to explain some of those things? I mean, where do you get those answers? How do you find out what happened when everybody's gone home?
Yeah, well, I'd love to give you an example of that. If you have 100 ballots that are issued and someone spoils one of those ballots, you're going to have 100 ballots issued and only 99 counted because one of them is spoiled. The election inspectors are required to document that in the poll book. 1 spoiled ballot. There's your, the numbers don't match, but there's your explanation. You're saying, how do you fix it if after the fact you go back? Well, there's a chairperson for that precinct. That chairperson is responsible for making sure things are balanced at the end of the evening before they seal up those boxes. It should be done at the event. And I understand it was a huge election, it was long hours, but we've got to get back to what needs to be done, and not just say it's okay.
It looks like human error, not fraud, then, the discrepancies?
I can't answer that.
Ms. Palmer, media reports were saying that at the Board of Canvassers meeting, you suggested that all the other townships and cities in the county besides Detroit be certified. You know, is that possible, and why did you feel that way?
In that meeting, I'm going to go back to not having the written executive report, the written executive summary. If I had had that in advance, I could have went through and highlighted all of the communities in Wayne County that had the unexplained precincts. At the time, I didn't. And Detroit is repeating with the absentees the problem with the unbalanced, unexplained. I started there, and 2 sentences later brought in, and Livonia too, because Livonia had a problem as well. I was speaking off the cuff after being attacked by my board members for being racist and trying to come to a compromise to find out, can I get these guys to certify what is in balance, what is in balance with explanation? Let's certify everything we know is good, and then have a discussion about how do we get to fixing what's not. They wouldn't let me get there because they were too busy coming after me at that point. Yes.
Who filed the complaint?
Grosse Pointe Woods Police and the FBI.
And what's the substance of the complaints?
Doxing, physical threats.
Anybody named in any of them?
My daughter and my husband, along with myself.
No, I mean, any individuals on the threatening list. Anyone, have you named anyone who's threatening?
Yes, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Do you fear for your safety at this point?
I fear for my daughter's safety a lot. Most of these insults and hurled statements and threats are regarding my daughter. How many local boards do you see, if there's a disagreement, the first conversation comes out of their mouth is racist and attacking each other instead of having a civil discussion? We need to bring civility back to civic engagement. Not only has my home and my family been threatened, my employer has been threatened. There are businesses that I shared a tweet months ago for a giveaway for a wedding dress. That bridal shop is being harassed and threatened at this point. Where does it end?
Ms. Palm, when you talk about being intimidated and being threatened, there are people in Grosse Pointe who feel that you've been responsible for intimidation and threats through taxpayers for Grosse Pointe and in the school board elections. So they see some irony here, that they feel you've been bullying them and now you're crying victim here. Can you speak to that?
The advertisements for taxpayers for Grosse Pointe schools included facts about school operations. They were not intimidating or harassing anyone.
Well, there's also an allegation that you're involved in a recall campaign for some of these school board members that didn't even bother to collect petition signatures. The implication being that you were threatening a recall, but you weren't really serious about it.
I did file a recall for 2 school board members. Our intent was to begin signature collecting as soon as the certification was done because my hands were full with the canvas. And now that we have additional COVID restrictions, those are going to be put on hold. I can't go gather signatures with COVID as high as it is right now. We were planning on issuing a press release for that, but this popped up first.
So when you say the canvassing, you mean the November canvassing, not the August?
Correct.
Okay.
You mentioned civility needs to come back. What a lot of people have seen from the White House is anything but civility throughout the election process. How can there be civility at this level when from the highest point in government there appears to be none?
I take responsibility for my actions. I can't take responsibility for anybody else's.
Can you share a thought in regard to the anecdotal testimony that came up in your meeting the other night as well as throughout about Republican harassment of poll watchers and vote takers and counters, and basically coming from out state into TCF trying to allegedly impede the process? Could that have attributed to the discrepancies you're talking about?
I'm not going to comment on that one.
Just one more question, please, after this.
Why would you not comment on that? It seems directly relevant to what you're alleging.
I was there for 26 hours straight at TCF Center. I saw it with my own eyes. It was coming from both directions. And I will leave it there.
Just one more question, please.
Are there any circumstances under which you would accept that a discrepancy can't be explained? I mean, is there an acceptable tolerance where you're like, well, we got to 99%, let's go?
I can't give you the exact number.
Sure,
there's no spot in the statute that says you're allowed to have 3% of 3 over, but Ingham County had their highest number off was 4. Right? That seems reasonable. That seems like it might be a clerical error. When you get into the larger numbers of 34, I think in the primary we had one that was like 76 off. You need to dig deeper. It's not okay to just say, oh, well, we can't figure it out.
So you're not looking for a perfect...
You can't, no.
Okay, so to use John's example, you'd take 10% over 70%.
Absolutely, yeah.
50%? I
was hoping to see an improvement from the primary, for sure.
But that's worth putting the brakes on a presidential election in this climate.
We weren't... I'll answer this one and we can be done. We didn't certify. And when that happens, it goes to the county and they have 10 additional days. We did not throw away any votes. We did not nullify any votes. We did not stop any votes. The process continues. We gave the state the additional time to ask some more questions to come up with those explanations.
Thank you all for your time and have a nice Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you.
Well, that was a very interesting news briefing right there from the GOP canvasser, really at the heart of it all this week. If you remember, the certification went for, then against, and then for again. And so it was really something to see there in Michigan, it's specifically Wayne County, Michigan, because at first the canvassers did not want to certify the two GOP canvassers, and she was one of them. Did not want to certify because she didn't like some of the numbers that she was seeing from the poll data that she was seeing in Wayne County. And then there was about a 2 to 3 hour public comment, and they were getting berated on really not going in the way of certifying. And it was even coming from Michigan state members there that they were talking to them and really putting some heavy pressure on them. You saw today, she says she was feeling threatened, her family was feeling threatened, and that's when they went and did certify. But then the next day they rescinded that, and now it's up to the Secretary of State. There's a big battle now going on because they did certify and now they're trying to get it back, so there's a big hoopla to do all of that. So stay tuned right there in Wayne County. Election 2020 continues on right here as we're still waiting for all the states there to certify. And then, of course, December 14th, the electors from those states will be making the final decisions on who and what states go for Trump and Biden here. Live look at the Capitol as we're just getting started here for you on News Now from Fox. We're going to take a short 2-minute break. When we come back in just a little bit, we'll be getting a live update in Wisconsin on the ground there as the two counties are getting recounts right now, and they should be happening pretty soon. We're being told that they're in a delay right now because President Trump's campaign of legal advisors are making some requests. We'll hear on the ground what those requests are and why it's causing some major delays right now. We'll have that for you and much, much more on News Now from Fox coming up. In the meantime, everybody, while we do wait for that to get going, let's take out to New Jersey. We do have a live briefing going underway related to COVID-19, and we will bring that to you here on News Now from Fox. Today, the numbers that they are seeing, 3,600 new cases being reported in New Jersey.
Let's do a modeling discussion here. It is going to get unequivocally worse. And that includes everything from cases per day to hospitalizations. Can behavior impact that curve? You betcha. And we believe the combination with surgical action and pleading for responsibility will have an impact. And again, we don't just sort of take steps, Judy, Pat, myself, none of us take steps that are symbolic, that don't have any oomph under them. So when we saw restaurants, not all, but a lot of restaurants migrating toward a sort of sloppy environment after 10 o'clock, we took action. We've lowered the indoor limits. With all due respect to the guy with the hockey quote, we cut out interstate indoor sports. We're pushing back, NJSIA is actually pushing back the winter season. We're in a vortex of cold weather where it's getting darker, and you've got one holiday after another. So we will continue to, everything is on the table. There's no necessarily obvious next up to bat. We would really like to see what's in place take hold. And I think through, for instance, non-essential businesses. People ask me about non-essential business, indoor dining all the time. By the way, indoor dining, I put separate from where we know establishment X has had an outbreak. They've been, either they on their own or with the local health authorities we will combine, take the right step. But I mean just the known increased risk that we have when, Matt, you may want to just ask folks, the known increased risk that we have by more indoor activity that we've talked about. So people ask us all the time, indoor dining, non-essential retail, non-essential businesses. I just got to say this, as long as Mitch McConnell is sitting on his hands and not getting behind a major stimulus that I believe both the White House and I know Speaker Pelosi, with whom I spoke the other night, and so many others, Bob Menendez, Cory Booker, are about to join us for the next bill signing. As long as he's sitting on his hands, you shut, without absolute evidence that there's spread and transmission, you shut essential, non-essential workplace or indoor dining, you're basically putting a bullet in them. And unless we see explicit transmission coming out of there, that's blood on our hands in a different respect. And it's shameful that they have not acted in Congress, especially McConnell and the Republican Senate, to throw a lifeline to small businesses. Listen, could you see a different scenario where there was that lifeline and you could afford, you had more latitude, say, you know what, we can afford to take a 2-week pause there because they're getting cash on the barrel in order to do that. That's the trade. That trade should be available. If Judy determines that those businesses are a place of transmission and we know they've got a lifeline that will keep them in business, that gives her and me more latitude to do something. And by the way, other states are talking about pauses. Rhode Island, take a look at Rhode Island's pause in their indoor dining. Their pause is coming down to 33%. We never went above 25%. So I'm glad they're taking a pause. Great governor, by the way, but also you got to parse through exactly what some of these steps actually mean. I'm just going to hit tests and waiting. I think we hit that earlier. There are long lines. We have enormous sympathy for folks waiting in long lines, which is why we are plussing up more testing resources as we went through earlier, especially into hotspots, and encouraging people, if you can, to get tested on weekends where we know the lines are less. And we're going to continue to put as much up against that as we can. By the way, we've also said this, Brent, this is not a New Jersey only thing. You look at Philadelphia, I saw pictures earlier today, around the country, this is raging, and that puts a supply, that means more demand, and it puts a strain on the reagents and other supply side stuff. Judy, any comments on nursing home transmission? You said that deaths are, cases or deaths are up.
We have calls with nursing homes almost every day now. We have over 260 outbreaks that we're monitoring, and our goal is to work with them to increase testing of everyone that enters the facilities. So next week I expect that we'll be putting out some pretty aggressive guidance on testing in our nursing homes.
As they say, I'm not sure this is in sports or in the movies. That's all she wrote. So let's mask up. Again, I have the honor in a few minutes to, with an august group, including both of our United States senators, all prime sponsors, Judge Esther Salas and her family, Chief Justice Stu Rabner, to sign Daniel's law into law. God bless that lad. He will remain forever in our prayers, and this will forever stand as a memory to him and as a legacy and as a step in a direction that sadly needs to be taken. So I want to thank Judy and Ed. As always, Ed, we didn't pull you in from the bull.
All right, so those are the updates there in New Jersey as they are seeing 3,500 new cases there being reported, the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's show you a live look right now in Georgia, everyone. We're waiting on Vice President Mike Pence. He will be doing a rally for the 2 in-demand Senate seats that are going to be up for grabs in January. And, oh, yeah, that will decide if the Republicans will keep the majority or Democrats will take it. So a lot on the line there in Georgia, and we'll be waiting for the vice president there moments away. But now I want to take everyone's attention to Wisconsin, where pretty soon the recounts will be happening. We're being told that the recount should have been happening already, but there was some delays in the morning. So let's get the very latest from Jason Kelvey out in Wisconsin, giving us the updates on what is happening on the ground there. Jason, how you doing today?
Hey, Mike, it's going fine. It's pretty quiet here. This is where that recount was supposed to take place, 188,000 square foot facility of the Wisconsin Center. This was where the recount is going to be happening, but right now we're on a little bit of a hold, and that is because the Trump campaign is making a number of requests, which I'll explain in a couple seconds here. But first, I want to give you a live look at what's happening here and what the situation looks like. This is where the recounts are going to take place. All these tables are spread way apart. You've got 3 chairs on this side of the table, one for one of the Trump campaign representatives, one for a Biden campaign representative, and then a third for another outside observer. Because we're recounting in the midst of a pandemic, you see there's plexiglass dividing those observers from the election workers who are on this side of the plexiglass. Everybody that comes into this facility has to have a mask. They have to have their temperature checks. That's what they're doing to keep people safe in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of recounting these 400,000+ votes here in Milwaukee County.
Wow, so interesting just to see everything laid out there. Now, when everything gets going, Jason, how many people are going to be there? I'm seeing so many chairs right now.
Yeah, well, the clerk for Milwaukee County is estimating they might have 800 people in here. That includes all of the media, that includes the election workers, and then, of course, those at each table you've got 3 observers as well, plus observers that are filling in and overflow seating over here as well. So this is going to have 800 to 1,000 people he's estimating in here. Right now we're seeing some people, we're seeing election workers that this morning they took their oath, they pledged to support the Constitution and as well as diligently and faithfully do their role as an election worker. They did take that oath this morning, but right now everything's on hold as the 3 members of the Board of Canvassers, those are the people that will make the official rulings when ballots are challenged, when Republicans or Democrats make various issues. The Board of Canvassers will vote on each of those issues, and the Board of Canvassers right now is meeting an executive session looking at requests that the Trump campaign is making. The Board of Canvassers is made up of 2 Democrats and 1 Republican here in Milwaukee County.
And there we go there as we continue to bring you the latest here on News Now from Fox. If you're just joining us, everyone, we do have Jason Kelvey here on the ground in Wisconsin giving us these updates that he is seeing on the recounts. And Jason, we talked about it yesterday, but for people that may have not seen that interview, how long is this recount process supposed to take?
Well, they have to be done in 13 days. So that 13-day window started yesterday. They have to be done in 13 days. They can only take 1 day off per state law. Now, this is going to run right through the Thanksgiving holiday. So here in Milwaukee, they have put together their proposed schedule for this recount. They are going to take Thanksgiving Day off, but that's about it. All the other days they'll be in here counting. But the clerk here in Milwaukee County, George Christensen, he says he hopes that they may actually be able to finish this recount by Wednesday, before Thanksgiving. We'll wait and see on that. There's a lot of work to be done, but first those challenges. If you take a look over here, Tim, photojournalist Tim Primo, what we've got is we've got 2 tables here. We've got a table closest to me is the Biden campaign lawyers, and then the table over there, farther from me, is the Trump campaign lawyers, and they're going to be making various arguments to the Board of Canvassers, who will be meeting to my right. They'll be making their arguments. Right now, the Trump campaign is asking for a number of things. They want to see a bunch of ballots taken and put aside. Those ballots are for a couple different issues, which, Mike, we talked about yesterday. One of those is the witness address. Here in Wisconsin, when you fill out your absentee ballot, you have to sign your signature on that absentee ballot. Then you have to have a witness sign it, and then that witness needs to put their address down. Well, the Wisconsin Elections Commission, which is our official body that oversees elections here in Wisconsin, for years now, for many, many years, they've told the clerks, the municipal clerks, that they could fill in that witness address if the witness did not put an address down. So they can use a database, they can use the internet, they can search or maybe make a phone call to the voter to get that address for the witness and then write it in themselves. So what the Trump campaign has asked that any of those ballots that have a different shade of pen ink, red or blue or whatever, different from the witness signature, that those ballots be set aside. The Trump campaign does plan to object to those particular ballots. Another group of ballots that they're going to object to is those who are indefinitely confined. Here in Wisconsin, we have a photo ID requirement. To vote, you have to present a photo ID. That also is in effect if you vote by absentee ballot. You need to upload a photo ID when you apply online for an absentee ballot. But there is a couple exemptions. One of them is for those who are indefinitely confined. Those who are at home because of illness, because of infirmity, or because of age, they can check the mark on that application that they're indefinitely confined, and then they don't have to upload that photo ID. Well, clerks here in Milwaukee County, as well as Dane County, the other county in Wisconsin that's seeing this recount, they told people in the midst of the state's lockdown, the safer at home order back in the spring election and primary, that those people, because they're at home, because of the safer at home order, they could potentially use that loophole to the state's voter ID law to get their absentee ballots. Republicans here are going to be challenging those votes, and so they've asked the commission right now to set aside all of those ballots. And in Milwaukee County, we're talking about 45,000 people voted this general election using that loophole, the indefinitely confined loophole to the state's photo ID law. So again, this is a state that President Trump is behind by 20,000 votes. So the Trump campaign is confident that they will have enough votes that they think they can toss out. The Biden campaign very confident that they're going to continue to keep their lead here in the Badger State.
And Jason, one of the things that President Trump was complaining about in Georgia was the signatures. Are they going to be looking at signatures as well here in Wisconsin?
Well, the Trump campaign just asked as well to see all of those photo IDs that were submitted. As I said, when you submit your absentee ballot request, you have to upload your photo ID. So the Trump campaign here in Wisconsin does want to see a copy of those IDs. I'm sure that would be used then to potentially compare the absentee ballot envelope, which has the voter's signature on it, with the ID to make sure all those things line up. We haven't heard exactly what they're going to do with all these ballots that they're asking to be set aside, but that is another one that they're asking for. They have a number of requests. So right now that Board of Canvassers is in executive session to review all of these issues. And again, that's the reason why this recount has not started here in Milwaukee County.
All right, definitely on standby. Jason Calvi, thank you for all the updates right there on the ground. You can't get any closer to that than right there that you are at. So thank you so much there, Jason. And while the counting will happen at some time today, I wanted to let you know that the counting for our interview yesterday, most in-demand interview that we had here, 250,000 views already, Jason. So yeah, a lot of people want to know these updates in Wisconsin.
Glad to do it. Glad to be with you. And we'll be on Twitter as well as Facebook, so join us there. We've got updates all day. We got video of what's going on here. We've got video of all of the poll workers who took their oath, promising to uphold the Constitution and faithfully discharge their duties. I got all that video on Twitter as well, so come join me there at Jason Calvi on Twitter.
That's awesome. All right, we will definitely do that, and many, many more will do as well. Thanks, Jason. As we continue to roll on right here on News Now from Fox, we'll continue to be getting updates in Wisconsin as the counting at some point will have to happen, and we'll be giving you those updates as well. All right, now let's take a look right here in Georgia. Looks like that rally is about to begin. This is where Republicans are trying to keep their majority for the Senate. And that's coming up, that vote in January. What we're going to do, folks, is take a short 2-minute break for some of you. When you come back, we'll stay right here for you. If it's live and it's happening now, you know we got you covered.
On a lot of people's mind, because Georgia is the block to keep Joe Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer from dominating and ruining America. And that's why we're here today, to make sure that we stay engaged. You may remember your history in the darkest days of World War II, when London was being bombed unmercifully. You know what their leader said? Never, 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 never give up. And that's why we're here today, to never give up for America and to pursue the freedom and liberty that we know. And folks, it stops right here in Georgia. All eyes are on Georgia, and that's why you've got to stay by the stuff. We don't know what the legal outcome with the legal challenges to a free and fair election will be, and we'll let the courts decide that. But there's something you can do to save America, and that's to re-elect 2 United States Senators from Georgia, Senator Kelly Loeffler and Senator David Perdue. Let's welcome them to the stage and get out and vote, and make sure you bring your friends to vote in this re-election and this runoff election. Help me welcome Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue.
Goodness, we are the battleground. We are on the front line defending the majority, but we're also the firewall against socialism in this country. That's what y'all are here to do. We are going to get it done. Look, Chuck Schumer said it all when he said, now we take Georgia, then we change America. No thanks. You know what they want? They want to raise taxes. Do we want our taxes to go up? No. Do we want the Green New Deal? Do we want open borders? Taxpayer-funded abortion? No. Look, this is what Georgia's about. We're about holding the line. We are the firewall. And you know what? They've got their agent of change in my race, in Raphael Warnock, a liberal radical. He's a radical's radical, okay? He is someone that has attacked our police. He's called them gangsters, thugs, bullies, a threat to our children. I asked him to apologize for those remarks. He declined to do that. You know, he suggested we should open our prisons, let everyone out, and then weaken the Second Amendment, take away our guns, leaving our communities defenseless. No thanks. Nope. You know, he welcomed Fidel Castro into his church. He celebrated Jeremiah rights. Yep, his sermon condemning America. Who does that? Not a Georgian and not an American. We're not going to let them take Georgia. You know, and this election is about much more than radicals. This is about the American dream. The American dream is on the ballot on January 5th. David and I are fighting for that for all of you. Look, we are not politicians. We're political outsiders. We're business people who know how to get our jobs done for you. We know we work for you, and we don't owe anyone in Washington anything. We're here to work for you. That's right. You know, and we have real work to do. We have worked tirelessly to deliver relief in the pandemic that Democrats continue to block. They don't want this to come out to the American people. They want political power. They don't want results. We're going to hold them accountable on January 5th for blocking funds to small businesses, to schools to reopen. We have to make sure we hold them accountable, and we need better health care plans. Obamacare has failed. We have to make sure, that's right, we have to replace it with something that covers pre-existing conditions, that's affordable and accessible, that makes it easier for families to choose the plans that they want. And we need school choice. We're going to fight for school choice. That's right. You know, we can't trust this to teachers' unions. We need to put the control in the parents' hands to put it student-centered first. And that's right. We also have to stand up for conservative values. I have spoken out against the cancel culture, the fake news, the deep state, the radical left. From day one, we are going to hold all of that accountable. We won't take it anymore. We're done. And you know, we are so grateful to Vice President Pence for being here today. He and President Trump, that's right, let's hear it. They have, President Trump, Vice President Pence have put America first, and we are going to continue that agenda. But we need your help. Look, everything's on the line right now. We need to ask you a favor. If you're our voice on January 5th, we will be your voice for years to come. That means getting out, telling your friends and family to vote. Vote early. Early voting starts December 14th. You can request an absentee ballot now. Make your voice heard now. Don't wait. We have to make sure that they hear our voices. That is very important. We're asking that. Please put yard signs out, bumper stickers, get your friends and families to vote. We need your support now. We will never stop fighting for you, standing up against the radicalists, against socialism. We are going to get this job done. And now I'm proud to introduce my good friend, our senior senator, the original business outsider, Senator David Perdue.
Way to go, Kelly! Guys, we got a great guy coming up now, and I'm going to be very quick, but I want to thank you, because we held the line already one time on November the 3rd. 52.5% of Georgia rejected the Democratic lean towards socialism in this election. Thank you for that. But today, we're the last line of defense against this country making a change to the left that we won't get to undo for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. We cannot let that happen. You heard Chuck Schumer, take Georgia, change America. Then you heard AOC said, oh, we have to win those 2 states in Georgia. We don't want to negotiate. We don't want to compromise. We want the Green New Deal as it stands now. We cannot let that happen. We know what they want to do. They've told us, guys. They've told us. They want to change the voting rules in the Senate. That will give them all power. They'll have the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. They'll do anything they want. Remember a little thing called the Affordable Care Act? You think that was done bipartisan? No. It was done with a supermajority. Imagine Dodd-Frank, the CFPB. Can you imagine what they're going to do if they get control of the Senate? Then they want to stack the court, guys. That's the next thing they want to do. And here's the bottom line. They want illegal immigrants to vote, y'all, if you can believe that, and access to our benefits. So we know what they want. The biggest thing that concerns me, though, is the safety of our country. It's one reason why 13 colonies came together in the first place, was to assure self-defense and safety for our own citizens. And they want to defund the police when we ought to be defending the police. We have spent 4 years with President Trump and Vice President Pence rebuilding our military, and these guys want to cut the military for the 3rd time in 30 years. Clinton did it, Obama and Biden did it, and they're going to do it, and they'll do it again with President Biden if it turns out that way. We're not going to let that happen in Georgia. They want to take away your private health care insurance from your employer. 180 million people. We don't want that to happen either. But guys, this is the last line of defense. This is my last word to you today. What we have to do right now is hold the line. Ronald Reagan reminded us of our responsibility. He reminded us that freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We don't pass it down in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for, protected, and passed on, or one day in our sunset years, we'll be sitting around telling our children and our grandchildren what it was once like in America when women and men were free. Not on our watch, guys. Kelly and I are asking you to stand with us. Stand in the breach here against socialism. Stand in the breach against Chuck Schumer. Stand in the breach against AOC. And let's make darn sure that the road to socialism never runs through the state of Georgia. Now, it's my pleasure to bring you the highlight of this trip. This man has been a hero of the American people for much longer than he's been vice president. He was the 50th governor of Indiana. He was in the House of Representatives for 12 years, and he was our 48th vice president. Help me give a good old Georgia welcome to Vice President Mike Pence.
Welcome everyone here to News Now from Fox as we continue to roll on right here. Moments away, Vice President Mike Pence going to hit that podium. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break for some of you, and you won't miss anything right here on News Now from Fox. All eyes right now are on Georgia as 2 Senate seats are up for grabs, and this will determine who has majority come January in the U.S. Senate here. And wow, Georgians are really feeling they know that a vote is coming up in January. Why? Because already $100 million worth of television commercials have been set aside here for this battle. It's everything from Twitter messages, robocalls, and of course those TV commercials, you know, those ones that go, every other commercial pretty much there, and you know it's going to be playing heavy in Georgia. Let's listen now to the Vice President.
Sonny Perdue. The state GOP Chairman David Schaefer. My friend Ralph Reed. Georgia's own Nick Ayers. Jenny Beth Martin, Ginger Howard, all the great Georgians who are here today. It is wonderful to see so many good friends out. And speaking of friends of mine, allow me to bring greetings from another friend of mine. And a man who's been fighting every day for the people of Georgia and the common sense values that have made this state great. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. I'm here because I stand with President Donald Trump. And I'm here because President Donald Trump and I stand with Senator David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler. So thanks for coming out today. You know, the President and I couldn't be more grateful for the support of the people across the state of Georgia over the past 4 years and over the past 2 weeks. You know, it's amazing to think already President Trump has received more than 73 million votes across this country. 10 million more votes than 2016. And the greatest share of minority votes of any Republican candidate for president in 60 years. And I can tell you, as our election contests continue, here in Georgia and in courts across the country, I'll make you a promise. We're going to keep fighting until every legal vote is counted. We're going to keep fighting until every illegal vote is thrown out. And whatever the outcome, we will never stop fighting to make America great again. That's why Georgia and America need David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler back in a Republican majority in the United States Senate. For all we've done together, for all we have yet to do, we need the great state of Georgia to defend the majority. And the road to a Senate Republican majority goes straight through the state of Georgia. Are you with me? You know, the president wanted me to be here today because we need Georgia to send these two great senators back to a Republican majority. First, because of who they are. And second, because of all we've accomplished. And because the Republican Senate majority could be the last line of defense for all that we've done to defend this nation, revive our economy, and preserve the God-given liberties that we hold dear. It's true. But I'm here because, first and foremost, of who they are. Like a son of Macon. After high school, he enrolled at Georgia Tech, paid his way through college by working warehouse and construction jobs, eventually worked his way to the top of the business world. He spent more than 40 years as a captain of industry, one of the most respected business leaders in America. But following his deep conservative convictions, he answered the call to service. And I can tell you firsthand that he's been one of the greatest and staunchest allies of our MAGA agenda in the United States Senate, Senator David Perdue. an amazing man. He's made Georgia proud. And also, like another incredible leader is with us here today. Fourth generation on her family's grain farm here in Georgia. Built her own company up from the ground. She broke barriers in business and sports and entertainment to become one of Georgia's most successful businesswomen. She has stood strong for conservative values and already emerged as one of the most important voices in the United States Senate. We need David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler back in the United States Senate. Thank you, Kelly. So I know you're out here today for the same reason I am, because of these two extraordinary people. But we're also here because of all we accomplished together with their support and under the leadership of President Donald Trump. I mean, think about it. 4 years ago, we inherited a military that had been hollowed out by devastating budget cuts, an economy that was struggling to break out of the slowest recovery since the Great Depression. Terrorism was on the rise around the world, and we witnessed a steady assault on our most cherished values. But under the leadership of President Donald Trump, with these strong allies in the Senate, we rebuilt our military. We revived our economy. We secured our border, stood with law enforcement, and fought for life and liberty and the Constitution of the United States of America. You know, it's amazing. Some of you may not know that actually we're a little bit of a military family at the Pence household. I'm the proud father of a United States Marine. And one of my unworthy son-in-laws is a lieutenant in the United States Navy. And we're proud of them both. And I couldn't be more proud to be vice president to a president who has signed the largest increase in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. With the strong support of Senator David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler, we're finally giving our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force the resources and the support they need to defend this nation. And it's not just been about those who serve in the uniform. It's been about those of you who did serve. In fact, I expect in this great patriotic state there's many men and women among us who wore the uniform. If you served in our armed forces, would you mind just raising your hand and giving us a chance to say thank you one more time? Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for our freedom. I love you too. You know, under the last administration, I don't have to tell our veterans, we saw years of scandal at the VA that shocked the conscience of the nation. With President Trump, with strong allies like your two senators, he signed the most sweeping reforms of the VA in 50 years. We fired more than 10,000 employees at the VA that were not giving our veterans the care that they earned, and now Veterans Choice is available for every veteran in America. And every step of the way, we had the strong support of Senator David Perdue on the Senate Armed Services Committee and Senator Kelly Loeffler on the Veterans Affairs Committee. Thank you for standing with those who served. And with that renewed American strength, over the last 4 years, we've stood up to our enemies and stood with our allies as never before. Under the direction of this Commander-in-Chief, the armed forces of the United States took down the last inch of territory under the black flag of ISIS and captured and killed their leader without one American casualty. We stood up to Iran, got out of the Iran nuclear deal, and an Iranian general responsible for the death of hundreds of American servicemen, Qasem Soleimani, is gone. So we've stood up to our enemies. We've stood with our allies. And it was this president, with the strong support of your senators, who kept the word that 4 of his predecessors have made to the American people and our most cherished ally, when he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. And closer to home, over the last 4 years, after the slowest recovery since the Great Depression, strong allies like your 2 senators, President Donald Trump revived our economy. We cut taxes across the board for working families and businesses. We rolled back more regulation than any president in American history. We fought for free and fair trade. We unleashed American energy. In our first 3 years, we saw 7 million jobs created and unemployment at a 50-year low. And through this year, this challenging year through which we've passed, with that strong foundation, with the relief efforts that Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler supported, we've already seen more than 13 million Americans go back to work. The great American comeback is underway. And the truth of the matter is, we've had the strong support of these senators every step of the way. When it came to our security, when it came to our prosperity. But also that's true when it came to the rule of law. And with the support of your senators, President Donald Trump and I have stood strong with the men and women who serve in law enforcement at every level. With President Trump, David Perdue, and Kelly Loeffler, we will always back the blue. And maybe of greatest consequence of all, longest-term impact on the life of the nation, is that with the unwavering support of Georgia's 2 senators, we've seen more than 220 conservatives appointed to our courts at every level. And they are all men and women who will uphold the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution, like the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. It's an amazing group of judges, principled men and women. And that includes Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And none of that would have been possible without the support of Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. In fact, let me just say, I want to specifically thank Senator Loeffler. She was the first senator in the United States to call for the confirmation vote of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And they both stood strong with this amazing jurist. You know, these appointments to our courts have maybe never been more important, because the courts are our last line of defense, the last vanguard of our liberties enshrined in the Constitution and in our founding documents. When we came into office, you all remember that we'd seen a steady assault on our liberties and our cherished values. The conscience rights of doctors and nurses had been compromised through bureaucratic fiat in the last administration. A group of nuns known as the Little Sisters of the Poor were hauled into federal court by the last administration to force them to compromise their faith to live under the mandates of Obamacare. And you all remember when Judge Amy Coney Barrett went through her confirmation 2 years ago. And the leading Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee said she was concerned about Judge Barrett's Catholic faith. She said, and I quote, "The dogma lives loudly within you." And their allies in Hollywood have been attacking Judge Barrett's faith ever since. Well, I got news for the Democrats in Washington. and 2 Democrats that want to join him. That dogma lives loudly in me. That dogma lives loudly in you. And the right to live and worship according to the dictates of our faith lives loudly in the Constitution of the United States of America. That's why for our liberties, for our future, for all the foundation of values that have made this country great, we need Senator David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler back in the United States Senate. You know, and let me also say, we were just talking on the bus a minute ago. Beyond all of that, over the last 4 years, a growing economy, a strong defense, standing up for our liberties. I couldn't be more proud to be standing with 2 senators and serving alongside a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. So for our security, for our prosperity, for our liberties, and for life, we need Senator David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler back in a Republican majority in the United States Senate. We need Georgia to defend the majority on January 5th, 2021. You know, the stakes in this election have never been higher. And here in Georgia, I got to tell you, the choice has never been clearer. Where David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler stand for a strong national defense, Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff will join Democrats in cutting our national defense to fund their big government programs. You know, Democrats a couple weeks ago were already talking about deep cuts in our national defense to fund their liberal agenda. And Raphael Warnock has actually demeaned our military and repeatedly defended the anti-Semitic rhetoric of Reverend Jeremiah Wright and criticized our most cherished ally, Israel. And where David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler cut taxes across the board, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock want to raise taxes on working families and businesses large and small. Where David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler back the blue and will support conservative judges and the right to life, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock support defunding the police, activist judges, and taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Now, I heard that Senator Chuck Schumer said, first we take Georgia, then we change America. Well, I got a message for Chuck Schumer and all the Washington Democrats. We're going to keep Georgia, and we're going to save America. Are you with me?
And we will continue to listen in here. Some of you are going to be taking a 2-minute break. Stay right here with us on News Now from Fox.
American decline. Where we're opening up, I promise you, they'll be locking down again. Remember when they said it was impossible to have a vaccine by the end of the year? I got to tell you, folks, buckle up. Before the end of this year, we're going to distribute about 40 million vaccines all across America. Thanks to the leadership of President Donald Trump, Senator David Perdue, and Senator Kelly Loeffler. We're making miracles happen. I mean, you all get it. We just got to make sure your neighbors get it. every day between now and January 5th. Their agenda is higher taxes, open borders, socialized medicine, a Green New Deal, abortion on demand, defunding the police, and packing the courts. John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock are wrong for Georgia and wrong for America. So, Georgia, I got back on the bus today. Because we need you to stay in the fight. We need the people of Georgia to stay in the fight for integrity in this election. And we need the people of Georgia to stay in the fight to defend the majority. Stay in the fight until we send David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler back to a Republican majority in the United States Senate. So I got a couple things I want to ask you to do in the weeks ahead. The first thing I want to ask you to do, and I heard that ballots are already being sent out, absentee ballots, is vote, Georgia. Vote to re-elect David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler to the United States Senate. Early in-person voting starts Monday, December 14th. And I checked before I got off the bus. If you want to make a note of it, on the 14th, you can go up the road to the Cherokee County Board of Elections, 2782 Marietta Highway, Suite 100, right here in Canton. Come December 14th, they open at 8:30. Be in line and vote to re-elect David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler to a Republican majority in the United States Senate. I mean, we need you to do everything in your power. We need you to do everything in your power to make sure, to just be sure, that your two senators will be there to be a check on an agenda of the radical left. It's up to Georgia. As we continue our election contests in courts around the country, I promise you we're going to stay in that fight. You stay in this fight in Georgia. I mean, let's show the world. Let's show the world what Georgia's all about. That the agenda of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi is not the agenda of the people of Georgia. So after you make plans to vote, I want you to go out and tell somebody. Talk to your neighbors and friends. I mean, we're going into a season here, an unknowable season. We don't know what the future holds, but in my house, we know who holds the future. But I want you to talk to your neighbors and friends. Tell them what's at stake in this election. Tell them why you're so passionately committed to making sure that every legal vote is counted. And tell them why we need these two senators back. I mean, the stakes in this election are just that high. You know, and I'll always believe that the most powerful media in this country is not your social media, it's not your major networks, it's not your big newspapers, it's not your AJC. It's word of mouth. It's when someone who knows you and hears from you about a candidate or a cause that you believe is important to them, important to their liberties, important to the nation. So tell your neighbors and friends that we got to count every legal vote and we got to re-elect David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler to the United States Senate. You go tell them. And in the uncertain days ahead, lastly, I'd encourage you just to have faith. Have faith that this president will never stop fighting. for all the values that have always made America great, have been making America great again, that built the biggest and broadest coalition of any Republican in the history of our country. Have faith in these two leaders and all those like them around the country that have stood undaunted for an agenda that's made our nation stronger, more prosperous, and more secure, and vouchsafed our liberties and our values. And have faith in your neighbors and friends. I truly do believe that if we hold the banner of freedom high, if we do like those words that are inscribed on the Liberty Bell from the good book, that if we proclaim liberty throughout all the land and unto all the inhabitants thereof, that the American people will rally to our cause. Because this is a freedom-loving nation. And this is a nation of faith. And finally, in these challenging times in the life of our nation, if you're inclined to bow the head and bend the knee from time to time, I'd encourage you to do that too. And pray for these courageous candidates who just finished a couple of tough campaigns and found themselves, the morning after the election, back in another one. Pray for our president, who gets up each and every day to defend the agenda that the American people elected us to advance in 2016 and to defend the vote today. And pray for America. Pray for all of the American people. And when you pray, pray with confidence. Again, in those ancient words from the ancient text. Remember that if his people who are called by his name will just humble themselves and pray and turn, he'll do like he's always done in much more challenging times than we live in today. He'll hear from heaven and he'll heal this land. This one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So pray for America. Pray for all the American people. And if all of us do all we need to do between now and January 5th, I think we're going to keep on winning. We're going to keep America growing. And men and women of Georgia, if all of us do our part, we're going to preserve our heritage of freedom for this generation and the next. And with your continued support and prayers, and with conservatives elected and reelected, from state houses to the Capitol, all across the nation, with every legal vote for President Trump counted, and with Senators David Perdue and Senator Kelly Loeffler back in a Republican majority in the United States Senate, and with God's help, we will keep making Georgia and America more prosperous than ever before. We'll keep making Georgia and America safer than ever before. And we will keep making America great again. Thank you all very much, Georgia. God bless you.
Vice President back on the campaign trail, this time for the two GOP senators who are facing a runoff come January. It will be a highly in-demand runoff there because, well, it will decide who controls the U.S. Senate there. And all eyes will be on Georgia. You know what they say, Georgia? Georgia on my mind. As we continue to roll out right here on News Now from Fox, some of you might be saying, hey, why don't you show the Democrats that are running there in Georgia? Oh, we would, as soon as we get some rallies that they will be featuring. If we see one, we'll pop it up. We show both sides right here on News Now from Fox. Thank you so much for joining us here worldwide as we continue to always bring you the top stories and headlines from across the country. Always great to be here with you. Live look at the Capitol right now. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break for some of you. Stay right here with us, folks, because we are about 40 minutes away from President Trump speaking at the White House. We got you covered today. For those of you that are still with us, we thank you so much here on this Friday edition of News Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Let's continue to roll on here. I thought this was interesting, the way that Thanksgiving is being set up this year. Obviously, it's a year that none of us saw coming. It's a year that has put tremendous strain for millions and millions of people in our country. It's even taken lives from our family members, our friends with this COVID-19 pandemic. But yet, for this Thanksgiving, the CDC is saying that no more than 10 people can be there celebrating with you on Thanksgiving Day. But it's almost a Thanksgiving hypocrisy what we're seeing, because we got the warnings there on Thursday, but then at the same time you're seeing commercials for Black Friday that says come on in and shop away. So you can't have the more than 10 people at your dinner table, but hey, grandma could come back with you the next day, and we could be with 300 strangers at a big box store and shop. So a little bit of a weirdness there that we're seeing there, but hey, 2020 is weird. It's so different right now, and I know a lot of people are feeling that. So we're all going to get through this together, but we just got to take this all with a stride, I guess, and continue to march on in the way of life that is right now. Let's show you that look right here at the White House while we do wait for the president. Moments away from that, I want to show you the Fox 32 story on Thanksgiving and masks. Never thought we'd say that, right? It's always Thanksgiving, and hey, bring a side too.
Jill Crittenden is part of a consortium that has studied the effectiveness of masks, and she's joining me once again this morning to talk about masking up during the holidays. Good morning to you. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Sylvia. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you have a mission that you're calling How to Spread the Word, Not the Virus. Tell us the message you're trying to get through when it comes to masking up.
I was motivated to start this campaign because I see groups of people sit down at restaurants and immediately everybody takes their mask off and starts talking to each other. And we know that a lot of COVID transmission is occurring when dining together, not only at restaurants, but also in homes. And when we talk, droplets that could carry virus shoot far out of our mouth and could infect people. And the louder we talk, the farther the droplets go. So high quality masks that fit snugly on the face to cover the nose and mouth can protect people from breathing other people's droplets in, and also stop the virus from shooting out when an infected person is wearing a mask.
Okay, we're looking at some video that you sent us to kind of show exactly what you're talking about. But okay, you've developed some safety protocols that you'd like to share with us. Let's start with the first one. You say people eating or drinking together should not talk while unmasked. And you kind of addressed that a little bit, but explain specifically why.
Well, studies show, like an example that you just showed, that where these droplets are visualized with lasers, they shoot far out of people's mouth when they're talking and singing. And when you're just breathing, even with your mouth open or opening and closing your mouth, a lot fewer of these big droplets are coming out. So I think that some of this transmission that we're seeing when people are eating or just having coffee together, they say, is because they're actually talking directly at each other.
Okay, number two, you say when dining together, do not touch your face or your food with your hands. Use your utensils. Explain.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is your hands can be contaminated, right, from touching things that are contaminated. So just use utensils instead of your hands, and don't put your hands on your face because the virus gets in through your nose, your mouth, or your eyes. So you don't want to put infected hands there.
Okay, you say hand hygiene and distance are shown independently of masks to be protective. Explain that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So people have done a number of studies showing that masks are protective, but they separately looked at hand hygiene and distance. And so just wearing a mask isn't as good as both wearing a mask and staying far away from each other. And similarly with hand hygiene independently correlated with protecting yourself from COVID-19.
Okay, so you have this list that you sent us that's important. I want our viewers to take a look at their screen. And you say these masks are effective at filtering small particles. And here they are. So let's go over them real quick. We have the Air Queen, Happy Mask, Halo Life, Nano Air, KN95, which we've all heard so much about, the ASTM1, or any higher surgical mask. And then you also say cloth-only masks are less effective, and you're recommending ear savers to make masks easier to pull up and down. Now, I should say, you're obviously not being paid by any of these masks that we have listed here. Why, in general, are you recommending these, though?
So there's two special filters that people have developed that can actually trap these small respiratory particles. Whereas with cloth, all you can do to prevent the particles from going through the mask is make the hole size really small in the weave really tight.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's hard to breathe through the mask because air doesn't go through the mask either. And so these special filters that are called electrets, like what are in a KN95, that's an electrically charged filter,
Mhm.
or a nanofiber. So people can just search for nanofiber filter.
Okay.
And that's the reason that I'm recommending these particular masks. Like you said, I haven't been paid by those companies, but I have actually done tests with a lab at MIT to see how much air is getting through and how many droplets are getting through. And so that's why I can have confidence that these filters really work. Compared to cloth. So they can filter out as much as 90 to 95% of the particles, whereas cloth rarely goes above 20% of filtration.
Interesting.
The thing is to get one that fits tightly, right? So that air is not going through gaps around the mask. And so cone-shaped or cup-shaped masks, which all of those ones that I listed are, help that make that tight.
Okay. I wonder if we can, hey, Mike, our director, can you put that list back up for our viewers again? Because I think it's important for them to see. And if we can get that list of the masks up there one more time, that would be great. But as we are trying to pull that up, here we go. Thank you so much, Mike. Where can people get these masks? And they can go online and probably just type those names and find them. And then finally, I think this is really important. You say air filtration and ventilation indoors is key as the people are gathering for the holidays. What's kind of your final word on that?
Yeah, so people are doing studies showing that if you have an air filter like a HEPA unit or open windows and fans, you can quickly disperse the virus so that it's not at a high enough concentration to infect people. Now, things have to be situated just right. So I have to reiterate that the utmost priority is what the CDC said, right? That gathering together with people outside of your house at Thanksgiving is very dangerous. And people are particularly concerned in our community because right now, most of the virus is in the young people that it's being transmitted. And so there's a lot of concern that they'll get together with older populations who are particularly vulnerable at Thanksgiving, and those people will likely become ill. And so that's, I just want to recommend people protect the grandmas and grandpas so that we can celebrate.
Yeah, Dr. Jill, we're starting to lose you a little bit here, but I get what you're saying. You're saying don't do it if you can avoid it, especially if you get around your elderly family members. But if you do get together to open windows, get any vent going, any airflow, that's the most important thing we can remember, in addition to wearing masks and all those other things that we've been told to do. Great.
And if it's warm, have a picnic.
I love that idea, but that's not going to happen here in Chicago. It can probably happen out where you are. Dr. Jill Crittenden with MIT. Always a pleasure, very informative. Happy holidays and have a safe one. I'm sure we'll be talking again. We appreciate your time.
To you too. Thank you, Celia.
Thank you.
And live look right now at the White House, about 30 minutes away from President Trump. We will have that for you in full as soon as it happens. Coming up next, right now, Daytona Everett will continue your afternoon right here on News Now from Fox.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Daytona Everett. You're watching News Now from Fox. We have had a busy morning already. Mike Page showing you all of these election results updates, taking you around the country, hearing from Vice President Mike Pence out there in Georgia. We have a couple live reports that are planned for later today, talking about the recount and certification that is going on out there. Georgia has officially been certified. Joe Biden is leading that state. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. We do have the president coming up in the next half an hour or so. We do know that he runs a little bit late typically. So before we hit that, we're going to go out to a COVID-19 briefing coming from New Jersey. A big statistic that played out this week coming from Johns Hopkins is that 250,000 people have officially died from COVID-19, kind of striking a little bit of a persistence to get this vaccine out and about. So that's been the big conversation. So for now, we're going to play out Governor Murphy right now until we see the president. We will take that shot again. You're watching News Now from Fox, where we bring you live, unfiltered, raw, nonstop news. It is a great network that we're running over here, showing you all of these events in their entirety so you can kind of make up your opinion for yourself, and we'll help you lead the way as well. All right. We'll play this out for you. Some of you are going to be going out to a 2-minute commercial break. When you come back, you will see that update from Governor Murphy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry to be a couple minutes behind. We have a lot of ground to cover today. I'm honored to be joined by the woman to my right, who needs no introduction, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persicelli. To her right, the Department of Health's Communicable Disease Service Director, Dr. Ed Lifshitz, another familiar face. Great to have you back. Ed, to my left, the Superintendent of the State Police, a guy who needs no introduction, Colonel Pat Callahan, the Director of the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, Jared Maples, Chief Counsel Parimal Garg, and Councilman-elect from Greenbrook, Matt Stanishi, is in the House. If that weren't enough, the First Lady of the great state of New Jersey, Tammy Murphy. Remember, the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund is still doing extraordinary work, njprf.org. Your money will go right to the point of attack to the people who need it the most in this state. I want to spend a few minutes giving an update on our testing program, so I think the first thing to do will be to give the results of those tests of the day. Today we're reporting 3,635 positive cases, which gives us a cumulative total since March 4th of 297,370. The positivity for all PCR tests recorded this past Monday was 7.98%. That's a little bit better than the past couple of days. Statewide rate of transmission today is 1.40. So we run through these numbers every day, and they are the resulting data from the tens of thousands of PCR tests we record on a daily basis. You could see here how our testing has increased exponentially throughout this pandemic. We recently hit a high of roughly 70,000 tests in one day, and for the month of November, we're averaging approximately, Judy, 45,000 tests per day. And remember, these are just the PCR tests. This data does not include antigen rapid test results. On this chart, we're going to go to another one. You can also see some days where the numbers of, I guess it's this chart, pardon me, the number of tests generally drops off. These are usually on the weekends. Big flashing sign here. So, where you could be tested on a weekend, we would encourage you to do so, as you may encounter shorter lines and shorter waits at our testing facilities. And to that, there are more than 400 active testing sites located throughout our state. The dots on that map, a little bit of an eye chart, Judy, forgive me, represent all but our mobile pop-up testing sites. You can locate a testing site near you, including participating pharmacies, healthcare and urgent care facilities, and state and local government-sponsored sites by visiting covid19.nj.gov/test and trace. Again, covid19.nj.gov/test and trace. And for pop-up testing, we are collaborating at the state level with local leaders to stand up multiple sites in several hotspot areas And these have opened over the past several days, and I'm told by the time we're gathering, these sites will also be on that page, test and trace. So, first up, testing is available in Harrison tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Harrison Community Center on Warren Street. Next up, Jersey City. Tests will be available from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. this upcoming Monday and Wednesday at the United Way on Bergen Avenue, and from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday and Wednesday at the Bethune Center on MLK Drive. Next up, Passaic County. Testing will be available next Saturday, November 28th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Passaic County Senior Services in Totowa. And starting tomorrow and running through December, testing will be available in Union City with our dear friend Brian Stack at the helm at 1600 JFK Boulevard. Now, these are all in the north. I spoke to my team. I think I will preview that on Monday. We will give you some southern locations, and Dan Brown will make sure I'm an honest man on that front. Each of these sites has been made possible through the Department of Health under Judy's leadership and in coordination with local partners, and we thank everyone involved for bringing these opportunities together. We will promote these locations through our various social media channels. So aside from these sites, we also continue to move forward with putting the BinaxNOW rapid antigen tests we have received from the federal government out into the field. Some 600,000 BinaxNOW tests are currently in the distribution pipeline to our long-term care facilities. And another, as you can see, 160,000 have gone to rapid response teams and county-based testing sites. We have, next up there you can see, about 100,000 BinaxNOW tests currently inventoried, with another 1.75 million BinaxNOW tests expected to be delivered soon from the federal government and from the Department of Health and Human Services. And we'll be ready to move on getting those to congregate housing facilities, Judy, schools, colleges and universities, healthcare centers, among other places where emergent needs may arise. Remember that the BinaxNOW test does not at the moment the results do not fit into any healthcare databases, either in New Jersey or anywhere else, but we're working very hard on fixing that, addressing that. The Q Health tests that we referred to, I guess, earlier in the week, they're coming, I hope, within the next week or so. They, in fact, do automatically report into the data system. So when we talk about our testing capacity, remember, it does not include results from the BinaxNOWs. Separate. And from this, it is expected that Pfizer will be applying to the FDA for an emergency use authorization for their new vaccine, which their clinical trials have put at 95% effectiveness. I was on with Albert Bourla, their CEO, yesterday, back and forth. Their team spoke with our Restart and Recovery Commission and went through the details of this. Should this application be approved, and should this be approved, we would then expect that our first shipment of roughly 130,000 doses would arrive in state around Christmas time, with more to follow. I'll ask Judy, as I know she was going to do anyway, to give a little bit more color on this process today, and we'll also have more to say about this at our Monday briefing. All of this is to say that we are in a far, far different place than we were at the early stages of this pandemic. We have the testing program in place, and it is working overtime. And we have the resources to continue to not only ensure a full testing regime across the state, but to ramp up testing when hotspots emerge. And we can begin to anticipate the arrival of a vaccine. We encourage you, please, to get tested, especially if you've been in a crowded indoor group setting where others have not been social distancing or taking proper precautions. Now, as Judy and I and others have reminded you over the past number of months, the other side of the testing program is our contact tracing program, which we continue to build out to meet the tremendous challenge posed by this second wave. On Monday, 207 prospective new contact tracers began their training, and they will be deployed statewide over the coming days as they complete their training. Once that happens, we will have more than 2,300 contact tracers on the ground. Our goal remains to get every county to a minimum number of 30 tracers for every 100,000 residents. This past week, 120 new tracers came online, and with their additions, both Essex and Union counties now exceed this threshold. 5 other counties, Passaic, Warren, Mercer, Cumberland, and Salem, have also reached this benchmark, as has the great brick city, the city of Newark. However, as we note regularly, we continue to see a lack of cooperation with our contact tracers. The percentage of cases in which people refuse to provide any contacts for follow-up tracing continues to hover. Judy, my numbers are at about 60%. I urge you folks, please take the call. Our contact tracers have a clear job. They're not in a witch hunt, making sure you have the resources you need to safely self-quarantine and notify those who you may have exposed so they can take steps to protect themselves and slow the spread of this virus throughout the community. We also urge you to download the COVID Alert NJ app to your smartphone, which is also a vital tool for keeping you protected. The app has been so far downloaded more than 375,000 times. That's an increase, by the way, of 30,000 since Monday. And every phone we add is another tool we have at our disposal to fight this virus. COVID Alert NJ is free and it is secure. It uses Bluetooth technology to exchange secure, non-identifying codes between smartphones and have downloaded the app. All notifications are anonymous. You'll never know who it was you were near, and they won't know that they're notifying you either. It'll all be done through the secure code. Multiple other states also use this platform. So the more people who download, the better position we are across our entire region. So please add your phone to our fight and download COVID Alert NJ. Before I get to the rest of today's numbers, a few other brief announcements. First up, we will be issuing an administrative order today clarifying that for outdoor, I think this is coming from you and me, Pat, is that right? For outdoor organized high school sporting events, individuals necessary to the sporting event, such as players, coaches, and referees, will not count toward the 150-person limit. This will mean that these sporting events, including the upcoming Thanksgiving week high school football games, can have up to 150 spectators. However, all spectators must continue to abide by social distancing requirements. Does this sunset, Paramel? It sunsets, I believe, after the, this is almost exclusively for the football games that are coming up over the next week. And while we're on schools, yesterday I was pleased to join with 6 of my fellow regional governors from New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island to reiterate the importance of keeping our schools open for in-person instruction with strong and appropriate and responsible protections against in-school transmission in place. The growing body of medical research shows that the path we are on with regard to in-person instruction is the right one and is the safe one. And we're also seeing the increasing evidence of the importance of time in school on a child's mental health and learning. We continue to closely track the metrics within our schools, and we continue to work alongside our district leaders, educators, and others to ensure that our schools can remain safe places for our educational communities. Remember, we have said as of Wednesday, 50-odd experiences of in-school transmission cumulatively since the beginning of the school year in late August. That's now a good 2.5 months, impacting 200 and something persons. We take every one of those transmissions and every one of those cases deadly seriously. But if you look at where the safe places are in the state, and by the way, where contact tracing is as good as it gets, I think outside of our hospitals and healthcare systems, it's the schools. We know exactly who are in those buildings. Now, this is not to say a couple of things, by the way. It's not to say that there is not transmission, and in fact, one of our kids' schools had this from outside the school into the school. You got to be very careful of that. That has existed, does exist, and you've seen districts from one, here and there go to all remote because 6 persons came in from the outside, as was the case with our kids' school. And that's not to say that this is a normal school year or that this is a stress-free school year. It is not. And I want to salute again our extraordinary educators who are at the point of attack, our extraordinary parents, our kids, our superintendents, our administrators and staff. They are leading in a time of extraordinary, unusual circumstances. And I take my hat off to each and every one of them. But there's no question. It's not, we can't bat 1,000. There's no normal school year. Our principles are safety and and of our kids and educators and other staff. It's high quality education. It's equity with flexibility wrapped around that. That's where it's been since day one as it relates to school. That's the way it'll continue. But I can't say enough good things about how well set up and well functioning and executing our schools have been. I was just back and forth this morning with another guy who's been a great advisor to us, Dr. Ashish Jha. When this whole pandemic began, he was at Harvard and he's ended up at Brown University since then. He's a leader. Judy knows him. He and I were back and forth. He did an outstanding piece yesterday in the Washington Post that made this sort of summarize what I've just said even more articulately and really captured that sense. And he and I were back and forth on that this morning. So let's move on. It's first time together since our Thursday, which means unemployment is up. I want to reiterate the new unemployment claim numbers that were released yesterday by the Department of Labor, which showed a 38% week-over-week drop in initial claims. Roughly 13,000 New Jerseyans filed for unemployment benefits last week. That's nearly 8,000 fewer than 2 weeks ago. That'll be little solace, if any, to the 13,000 people who did apply this week. That is the 5th consecutive week of decline. I guess that's a good thing. However, we will not lose sight of the tremendous impact that this pandemic has had, as nearly 1.8 million New Jerseyans have sought unemployment benefits since March. That is an unimaginable number, and we have to hold up and pray and help out every single one of them. And for the 1.5 million who have been deemed eligible for payments of that group, a total of $19 billion in combined state and federal benefits has flowed to them and their families. Labor Commissioner Rob Sarangelo and his team have done tremendous work over the past, coming on now, 9 months, and I thank them again for all they continue to do to help our workers and families. I had a conversation with a friend last night who said, hey, gosh, I'm still hearing stories about people not able to get their unemployment insurance. Folks, I'd say 2 things. One is, if you know someone, get us that person's details and we will follow up. We have followed up on countless people over the past 9 months. Secondly, in now literally every case, it is a very particular reason to that individual. There's no broad systemic issue. The tsunami has quieted down. It's still pretty darn significant. 13,000 people in 1 week is not normal. That's way off the peak. But there's no sort of tsunami-related reason. There's no systemic-related reason why folks aren't getting it. It is overwhelmingly, I think it's literally 100% at this point, specific to the individuals. And by the way, I don't even blame the many folks out there who have been told they're not eligible and they're still out there screaming that they deserve unemployment insurance. I don't blame them for 1 second. We have a lot of folks right now at the end of their rope. Who could blame them? I understand that completely. But the fact of the matter is there's no systemic issue. The tsunami has largely, we're up to speed with it, even though it continues to be a very high number. The reasons are very particular to the individual case, and I will just reiterate, if you know of people like that, get the details to us, get them to me personally. I promise you we will follow up on them. A couple of other items, and I apologize for all the items we have today. Last night, I signed an election-related executive order. I guess I did that today or last night, and it does 2 things. First, it extends the certification deadline to next Wednesday, November 25th, only for counties unable to meet today's deadline because of the impact COVID-19 has had on their Board of Election staff and facilities for those counties. 2 counties, Ocean and Salem, qualify for this extension. And we get a lot of folks who have been impacted by COVID-19 in the Board of Elections community there. Keep them in your prayers. Secondly, it extends by 1 week from December 4 to December 11, the date by which all counties, not just those 2, but all counties, must conduct their election audit. This extension will enable counties to quarantine employees who have been exposed to the virus for the recommended 2 weeks, while ensuring that the audit occurs before the meeting of the electors on December 14. With that, let's take a look at the other overnight numbers, and let's begin by looking at our hospitals. As of last night, Judy, I've got 2,505 in our hospitals, of whom 2,272 are known COVID positive, and 233 are persons under investigation awaiting test results. Of that group, 452 patients required intensive care. 233 ventilators are in use, and that percentage is up meaningfully. You or Ed may want to opine on that. Throughout the day yesterday, 333 new COVID positive patients were admitted, while 290 patients were discharged. That's a good thing. And again, this is apples to oranges because this is not included in our confirmed COVID fatalities. 27 patients died in our hospitals yesterday. But in terms of confirmed losses of blessed lives, we can say that there were 23 newly confirmed deaths from COVID-19 complications. That brings the statewide total to 14,900 confirmed deaths, with another 1,812 probable deaths. As we do every day, let's take a breath and sit back and remember 3 of the blessed souls we have lost. We start today by celebrating the life of Richard Smith, Jr. of Berkeley Township. That's a town Tammy and I know quite well. He had made the Jersey Shore his year-round home for nearly 40 years. He served honorably in the United States Air Force National Guard and for the United States Department of Defense for 31 years, retiring in 2007 with the rank of Chief in the 108th Air Refueling Wing Base out of Joint Base McGuire-Dix, Lakehurst. He was a leader with the Berkeley Little League, taking on the role of team scorekeeper and statistician for numerous teams. Pat, both Tammy and I have had, quote unquote, the book in the dugout on many an occasion, and I, frankly, at a certain point gave up and handed it to Tammy full-time a few years ago. And one of his greatest joys after his retirement from service was coaching his now 20-year-old son, AJ, who lives with his mom. Richard is survived by his wife of 39 years, Patty Kelly Smith, with whom I had the great honor of speaking the other day. She's now in Forked River. And their 3 sons, AJ I mentioned, who lives with her, Tim, who's a retired state police lieutenant, Pat, and now a teacher, and Christopher, who has his own business, as well as by Tim's wife, Ruthie, and Christopher's fiancée, Heather. He also leaves 7 grandchildren, Danica, Stephen, Mateo, Cameron, Diego Santos, and Marcos, and 2 great-grandchildren, Talon and KJ. We thank Richard for his years of service to our nation and his community, and God bless and watch over him and his Patty and his family. Next up, we recall Rita Frassetto.
All right, you're watching News Now from Fox. I'm Daytona Everett. Wanted to bring in this live look for you. We are expecting President Trump in the next couple of minutes here. His briefing is set for 12:30, so wanted to break in and give you a live look at the White House. We haven't heard from the president this week apart from Twitter. We've heard from Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary. We've heard from Vice President Mike Pence during that coronavirus task force meeting yesterday, but not yet from the president himself. So we will be hearing from him momentarily as we wait for the president to take the stage. Let's just talk about the past couple hours or so. It's been a busy morning already here on News Now from Fox. Like I said, we did hear from Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary. She talked briefly about Operation Warp Speed, took some questions from reporters, but did not answer questions on Trump conceding, basically just saying there is litigation still out there that they want to pursue. We went to Wayne County, Michigan, where there was an update from a canvasser out there. For those of you who are unaware of what's going on in Michigan, they're deadlocked at a 2-2 vote right now to certify the state of Michigan. We're hearing that the president is meeting with some of those election officials in Michigan today. We had a live report in Wisconsin where recounts are underway in 2 counties, that's Dane County and Milwaukee, talking about what that process is looking like. A lot of states have had to go through the recount process amid the Trump administration pursuing litigation in several states. Let's not forget about Georgia. This is a state that we've been closely following since the election, where Senate runoff is going on. This morning, there was a rally held with a special appearance from Vice President Mike Pence. He got up there and spoke about the two GOP candidates in Georgia. This is an important race in the Peach State because whoever wins Georgia will take the majority for Congress when it comes to the Senate, which is integral in making certain legislation pass through. Speaking of legislation, we're still waiting on a stimulus bill to pass through the Senate. We heard from Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier this morning. That's what they're calling a lame duck session as of right now, with months in the waiting for any type of COVID-19 relief that was promised. Going back to Georgia, Vice President Mike Pence, he'll be making his second appearance in Gainesville, Georgia. That's coming up, and we'll bring that to you live here on News Now from Fox when we see it. Just 46 days out until this runoff election. And again, we'll have live reports from Georgia as well this afternoon, speaking about the latest when it comes to that runoff election, what rallies are looking like, what surrogates are helping out both sides of the aisle to push that vote forward. We had record turnout here for the 2020 election, and that's what specifically